Hello, guys and gals, me Mudahar, and ladies and gentlemen, I gotta be pretty real with you. The worst part about YouTube as a hobby is honestly the comment section, and it's nothing to do with the comments you guys write. To be honest with you, I don't care if you guys, love me in the comments or you guys absolutely dislike me. I love reading the discourse when it's human beings talking. But obviously, I'm sure some of you guys know, and I'm sure a lot of your favorite creators have probably seen this. There is a serious problem with YouTube bots. Now, I've talked about this before, so there's no reason for me to be making another video unless there was some pretty serious criminal shit happening in the comment section below. Now, normally I wouldn't care about bots so much, and there's multiple types of them. Like, you'll probably see, like, the bots, as soon as I upload a video, you'll go into the comment section and they're like, wow, I found this video really inspirational, Muda. You really changed the way I live. Wow, thank you for existing. Yeah, I know that's a bot, okay? Like, 100%, that has to be a bot. The video came out 1 second ago and you already wrote the comment, okay? Get out of here. I could talk about stretching my anus to, like, extreme degrees, and these bots would post that crazy comments. Wow, I found this video really inspirational. But I'm talking about these specific comments that, the bots that I'm actually talking about, however, have been sharing CP in the comment section, okay? Yes, ladies and gentlemen, there are YouTube bots now that are now basically spreading links that you can access, links that go to Discord, and on these Discords, they are openly sharing actual CP, CSAM material, exploitation material. So how does this happen? How is this occurring? And I'm going to obfuscate some names because, to be honest with you, I don't want to give attention. And this is such a serious issue that, again, I feel like giving attention to these specific individuals just gives them power. So one of the comments that you'll see, for instance, are, these random bot accounts where they'll say, I posted a preview of Daisy's Destruction on my page, full in description. Now, obviously, if you're ever a fan of my dark web series, you know what this specific video is referring to. It's quite possibly one of the most evil, illegal videos that are on the dark web or just on the internet in general. If you want to learn more, there's a great documentary about Peter Scully, the scumbag behind this. I believe it's 60 Minutes Australia. Really, really dark, raises the hair on the back of your neck type of shit. But again, it gets even further. This is an issue that was out about a year ago. And again, this was posted 1 year ago on Reddit. What is the deal with, again, this group, and why is this happening? So on every big YouTuber's video, there's always a weird bot spamming hundreds of links to illegal material. One of the most horrible things I've ever seen them post to is, again, Daisy's Destruction. How is that allowed on YouTube? So one of the reasons why this is kind of allowed on YouTube is apparently these people have been trying to bypass the actual moderation. So for instance, if you take some of their comments, like these bot comments, you basically highlight it all, you copy it into a text editor, you might notice that they're abusing Unicodes like right to left, where certain languages like Arabic, Hebrew, anything that is written right to left, they will be abusing, these mechanics so that it will look normal to the human eye, but to a computer, to a AI moderation tool, it'll just look like garbled gibberish, okay? It'll be like the weirdest text they've ever seen, which makes moderation, I guess, difficult. And this is just one of the tools in these scumbags' arsenal. Now, thankfully, YouTube does actually deal with some of these channels. I would say quick, but not quick enough. And the reason I'm making this video is that, I decided to investigate and go down the rabbit hole. So for some of these accounts, they were posting on my channel as they were posting on all other YouTubers' channels, right? And they would post, again, constant slurs, racial slurs. They'd say stuff like goy, so on and so forth. You can probably imagine what these slurs are going to. But every time you would go to the profiles for these pages, in the YouTube bios, they would have these Discord links. They would have Discord URLs that you could click on and access. Now, I decided to go down the rabbit hole, and I decided to flip on every virtual machine, secure container, VPN, proxy, every OPSEC protection tool in the book. So I do not recommend you do any of this on your own. Chances are, if you just go into these areas, they will flood you with illegal material. But anyways, I decided to check these Discords out, and to no shock of mine, there was very, very visible illegal material. To the point where obviously I reported it via Discord. I did every reporting I could to law enforcement agencies, as you should when you come across disgusting shit like this. But then it got even deeper. It led me to an entire forum group where apparently these people are openly on the clear web just sharing illegal material and operating raids against each other. But to give you an idea, anytime you would connect to these discords or something, right, there would actually be, conniving scumbags on these discords where they would abuse the private message system and actually send users adult, CSAM material, illegal material. So this was a post from a year ago where a user claimed to be banned from Discord for reporting a CP server. Their account literally got suspended due to serious policy violations. And you might be wondering what the policy violations were. They broke the rules for child safety. So the way that I understand it, these scumbags guide young children or unsuspecting idiots into their Discord servers, right? Because, kids just click down the rabbit hole or anything. They'll join any Discord you give them, okay? We're all dumb kids. The difference is, when I was a dumb kid, there wasn't these kind of calculated scumbags on the internet at this level of prevalence. But so a kid joins a server, they get sent illegal material, the scumbags report the victim's account, and then the victim's account obviously appears to possess, some level of illegal CSAM material, which probably gets them into trouble, not just with Discord, but definitely would start an investigation, I would imagine, with law enforcement agencies as well, especially when Discord is kicking you off for that reason. So the user says there's a bot channel on YouTube where they post really deranged comments. They went to research, joined their servers, and found out that the owner admins were sending gore and shit, and later I found out from members that they sent actual CP in servers. And they just keep creating new servers if they get banned. Yeah, Discord just has the biggest predator problem imaginable. So as a normal person, I reported it and left the server because I don't know what else to do. After several days, I got 3 Gmails from Discord. First was that my account was disabled, then the second was that my account was permanently suspended, and the third was thank you for reporting me. So they went into their account standing and they were permanently suspended for child safety. So according to this user, and again, I don't know everything in the backend that happened, but they ended up getting banned for reporting this kind of disgusting behavior. And it really seems like they Uno reverse carded on him. And again, obviously some guy in the comment section literally says, yeah, you should have done that on an alt. And yes, that is true. You should not be investigating these things, period, unless you actually know the kind of scumbags you're dealing with. These people are willing to not just get rid of your account and guide you into these kind of places, but they're also willing to try and attempt to hack little children, hack any unsuspecting victim, and God knows do whatever with their stuff. Now, YouTube, when it comes to moderating comments, they actually did do something pretty, wild back in 2019. They actually shut down comment sections for a lot of family channels. So for instance, one large family channel is this channel called Jordan Matter. Now, for anybody that doesn't know, this is a huge channel that obviously, they share videos of their child, right? Like kids become parents for a day, daughter's new best friend, blah, blah, blah. And they're pretty popular. Like these videos get 70 to 80 million views, okay? And even nowadays, they're still pulling in millions of viewership every day. It's literally just a little girl put up on the screen, dad records her, posts it all online. Now, his channel got his comment section turned off. So again, from 6 years ago, back in 2019, he kind of talked about this a little bit.
Hello everyone, I am at Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas. I just snuck into the pool. I'm not allowed to be here. It's closed. Let's go swim.
Man, I love how they try to convince the children watching. Ooh, he snuck around. No, he paid for filming privileges. Come on.
Do you know why they did that? Comments, just like they have, because YouTube has disabled all my comments, just like they have on thousands of other family channels. Do you know why they did that? Because a few people wrote comments that were inappropriate on certain family channels, not mine, and as a result, they just shut down comments on everyone. Hopefully, it's temporary.
I love how he's really underselling exactly what happened. Let me explain in the non-child friendly way, okay? There was a lot of pedophiles who were on the platform, okay? that were actually leaving comments on YouTube, okay? They were actually communicating with each other. So there were investigations by the BBC and trusted flaggers that found clips that kids just posted, right? Like kids would just post. And remember that stuff back in the day where it was like webcam video from, you would just put that into like YouTube search and it was just, you know, kids using like the webcam recording tool at the time, auto posting it, and the thing would just auto title it as like webcam video from whatever so-and-so date and time. Yeah, there would just be scumbags, predatory adults who would leave disgusting comments and sexually explicit requests, right? Again, clearly on YouTube to little children, all right? And obviously YouTube was like, okay, we got to get our algorithms to first of all detect where these kids are uploading, all right, where are their videos? Okay, turn those comment sections completely off, okay? It was like throw the baby out with the bathwater. And normally, I'm not even so opposed to it. But so these kind of groups evolved from this nonsense into like getting people off platform to Discord and to other sites. Now this group that has been kind of flooding everyone's channels, everyone's, you know, this bot group, you know, kind of started off as like kids, you know, just a trolling group that would pick on, you know, children who had like neurodivergency. Okay, kids who were on the spectrum, all right? Easy targets, basically. Disgusting shit. And then, of course, it became a more organized endeavor. Now, when people say, what is the darkest corner of the internet? Is it 4chan? Is it the Shardy? Is it Kiwi Farms? A lot of these websites, you know, they sound spooky, but all the websites I just said are websites where, yes, it's the Wild West of the internet. There is some wild stuff being said on these websites every single day. Some would say these websites possibly harass actual people, right? Even though I think when it comes to like Kiwi Farms, not the Shardy, but I think Kiwi Farms is like a don't, you know, interact with people we talk about mentality. I know the Shardy, the Soy Jack Party, absolutely like does raids and stuff, but each and every single one of these websites has a very solid policy of no child, adult, or child, you know, exploitation material. That stuff is very much banned. However, the website that, you know, these YouTube bot comments are linking people to, you know, first they get people from YouTube to jump into Discord, and then on Discord they will link, you know, children or new visitors to their new website. Now this website is, I don't want to like exactly name it, but we'll just call it the, we'll call the website, you know, Filthy Cabin, or Website X, so to speak. Now, I went to Website X, and this is a website that will absolutely try everything they can to, you know, grab user cookies or absolutely log IP addresses. I mean, every website logs your IP address, but these people do everything they can to grab as much information on their visitors and possibly use it to dox you. So again, I went through this with virtual private networks, you know, VMs, every single protection that I could have, okay? Because I'm not, you know, dealing with the script kiddie nonsense. And this is where it gets really disgusting. So on their website, obviously, some of the things that these people talk about very openly, clear web stuff, by the way, they have a dead crack baby thread. So just kind of shows you the disgusting sickos we see. Inside the media tab, where everything can be posted, gore, allowed, everything, they're openly posting or talking about child, you know, material. Inside the Q&A, where somebody asks, should I eat animal feces? What animal should I kill on camera? And of course, at some point, if you're worried about, you know, these people, you know, constantly ban evading, they have full guides for it, how to evade Discord bans and whatnot. And of course, if you can imagine the kind of sickos that are on this website, they are map priding all day, every day on this site. Now, I don't have to explain to you what the fuck map pride is. So one of the staff members on this website says, please calm down your LARPs because we got reported for an age of consent thread. And please don't post bestiality. Now, why would they be asked not to? I guess it's because apparently the service providers for this disgusting Website X were actually being hit with these constant complaints of illegal material being hosted. Now, in this case, I want to thank a website known as the Kiwi Farms here. Obviously, you may not like them, but in this case, they actually have a lot of the screenshots and a lot of the evidence basically archived. They actually have a pretty interesting view on the history of this organization. And it started off as a group pretty much known as No Limits Blocks. Now, the name is actually a reference to Peter Scully's No Limits Fun, right? So you can see sort of where the origin points for this degeneracy kind of lie into. And eventually, if you go to Ruben Sim's video, he'll even tell you that, at some point, about a whole network of predatory individuals on Roblox were just chilling in these groups. And it later evolved into an entire forum. Now, according to individuals from the Discord servers in this disgusting group and this disgusting area, apparently individuals were saying that when they joined the Discord for like an hour and they saw what is 90% sure was, again, illegal CP. And there were people from a more notorious FBI investigated group that targets children for self-harm and exploitation purposes, 764, possibly were in it. Now, again, these are all screenshots and archives and records captured by Kiwi Farms. So again, they're the ones that did the capture. I'm not going to say that I was the one that, dug into these areas and got this stuff. This is a lot of history that we're looking at, several years. And, it's all out there in the open. And unfortunately, these people are pipelining and just commenting all on actual YouTube videos. But I think it's just insane that, we kind of live in a world where, years ago, many years ago, if you ask somebody, how do I find illegal stuff on the internet? You'd have to go to the dark web. But it's disgusting that the pipeline for accessing this disgusting material, it just takes a few clicks on YouTube now, all through the comment bots. I mean, going down this rabbit hole is such a mentally obliterating thing. Because again, the amount of police reports and the amount of tips that you have to file and the reports you have to make on really disgusting stuff shouldn't have to be happening. This stuff shouldn't have happened in the first place. It shouldn't have been a thing's fault. It shouldn't have been a thing. But unfortunately, comment bots on YouTube have jumped from saying meaningless shit. And I remember back in the day when I was younger, guys, comment bots used to just post cute little chainmails, right? Like it used to be cute little like creepypastas almost. And now in 2025, and again, this stuff has been going on since like the early 2010s, but it's gotten really bad in the last couple months to the point where, again, they are openly, very quickly, within a couple of clicks, leading children, leading anybody off onto Discord platforms, and then through Discord, pipelining them into a clear web, disgusting website where the most illegal material is being openly shared. Now, again, I'm just going to say for the record, I haven't opened up any of their image threads, but being that they're so brazenly talking about it, I have no reason not to believe that illegal stuff is being shared. But the fact that it's being done so openly and, they're just trying to get people to jump onto it, and, it'd be one thing if this was in the darkest corner of the internet. But the fact that these people are pipelining individuals from YouTube and other large social networks, that needs to stop. And I really, with all the AI shit that YouTube has been pushing and stuff lately, I really wish some extra effort is put towards stopping this specific behavior. Because I'll be real, man, like YouTube is not a job for me, but it's a hobby. And I think the worst part about my hobby is not like, oh, I got to record a video or edit the video or do something boring in the process of making a video. No, it's the fact that I have to basically full-time job the moderation sometimes. And I have to try. And no matter how much you whack-a-mole against it, these people keep surviving and they keep posting. And you might be like, Muda, you talking about this probably makes the situation worse or maybe makes you a target. And at the end of the day, look, that's still no excuse. I think most people don't know how bad the situation is, but I really feel like if this blows up and at least like people are kind of talking about it, maybe, a site like YouTube can maybe make this a priority focus. They do a decent job moderating, but they really have to stop this stuff because these people's accounts are active sometimes for about a month. And in that month, God knows how many people they attract to these Discord servers where they're just sharing illegal material right there and then going over to another website where they're sharing even more illegal stuff. It's disgusting. It needs to stop. And ladies and gentlemen, if you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike it if you dislike it. I am out. Hello, guys and gals. Would you ever, shoot somebody in the head over a copyright strike on YouTube? If I flashbanged you just now, it's because I saw something last night that actually just blew my mind. I'm still actually trying to process what I've seen. Now, I've tussled with a few personalities on this platform. I've had my arguments. I've had my fair share. I've covered things like false copyright strikes. You know what I mean? Like when we talked about things like quantum TV, that was a goofy situation. Haha, let's kind of laugh at the stupidity of this one person who is blatantly abusing the copyright system. Well, today I want to talk about a copyright troll that apparently not only lost a copyright dispute on YouTube, but in order to resolve it, allegedly shoots the guy that he was copyright striking and his wife over internet beef. Like, what is going on? I don't even get it. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me start off, okay? Last night, on Sunday, in the beautiful city of Las Vegas, in the state of Nevada, in the country of the United States of America, there was people walking around the Bellagio Casino. Now, if you've never been to the Bellagio Hotel Casino, beautiful place, right kind of at the center of the ritzy side of the actual Las Vegas Strip. You know, where people go and they gamble their money away and they have a good time and they get drunk on the streets. Yeah, there was a clip where, this person was just minding his own business, him and his wife, all right? And, they just end up getting shot in the head. So in this clip, a YouTuber known as Finny the Legend, yes, Finny the Legend was just minding his own business with his wife and gets shot right in the head. Now, I'm obviously not going to show you the clip of this happening. I'm not even going to, bring this up. I'm not going to present what happened. But I saw this happen last night, and I was genuinely very blown away. Now, in the clip, this 4-foot tall Ewok walks into the entire clip and decides to fire a few rounds into Finny the Legend. And the thing about this is he does this while the guy is live streaming, and turns out this man is also a pretty prominent YouTuber in that IRL daily live streaming space. So I decided to look further into it, and obviously Finny the Legend, is a man that has, or used to have, 4,000 subscribers on the internet. And a year ago, there was one video posted, look at what Sin City Family, P. Manny, and Julie did to me. The copyright video, remember this is a whole year ago. And the thing about it is, this is also beef that's been kind of long-standing. You probably didn't hear about it because it definitely flew way underneath the radar. So a lot of these videos are just kind of edited together with CapCut or some mobile application or something. And it's just these people having beefs. So you can see right over here, Finny actually won. And he actually did manage to counter-notify, and his videos ended up actually being restored. But if you look closely, Finny the Legend received that copyright removal request for his video. And again, the video title here was Who Said My Channel Going Away? TMC. Video title, P. Manny Nobody Likes a Liar. You didn't get any my super chats. Stupid. So yeah, this is all just beef between two entertainers showing us about the IRL worlds of Las Vegas. Now, the thing about all of this is Finny actually wasn't completely innocent from antagonizing his attacker. Not saying that, anytime anything on YouTube is deserving of what had happened to him. But, you look through the old live stream records and, anytime you find these videos on SCF, which is the Sin City Family, this is just constant A-logging, constant just, videos on, on this person. He's just constantly going at him, right? SCF deletes streams using N-word, lies about it. So this guy is just constantly clipping this dude, sharing this stuff around, and it's getting watched by thousands of people. This is just some micro warfare that's happening on the internet. And obviously all of this eventually culminated in the guy that he's calling out actually showing up and putting him down for good. But yeah, this beef, as you can see, was pretty long-standing. Literally, if you look into the live section, where, again, these people are out there streaming, and they're pretty popular on the streaming space, too. Obviously, if you look at the For You section, because I'm looking into it, he's just exposing the Sin City guy. So it's just long-standing internet beef. So ultimately, in the end, as I showed you earlier in that clip, Manny Wise comes in. Now, YouTube has since shut down Sin City's channel, which shouldn't become a shock to anybody because, when you're allegedly, and I say allegedly because this person has not been tried in a court of law, when you're out there committing what allegedly are some pretty serious crimes like double homicide, okay, YouTube's probably going to jump in, and they don't just shut down your channel to delete the evidence. They shut down your channel, and then they probably work with local law enforcement to make sure that all the evidence that you ever gave this platform is provided right to them. So immediately I went to the good old Wayback Machine, and back from December 23rd, 2024, you can see that Sin City, or Manny Wise, on this channel has like 13,000 subscribers. So it's literally like a daily live streamer. The guy had like 179 people watching. All right, and again, they actually had a whole network of channels, okay? They had Sin City Family, Sin City Abel, Sin City Julie, Sin City Angel. Well, we can tell that there wasn't really any angels in this situation. The guy would just walk around and explore Las Vegas, and that would just be like the entire story over here, okay? But what had happened was, with enough internet beef and enough controversy between these two characters, it ended up with Manny Wise deciding to stop doing the rap game, which apparently Manny is in fact a rapper, or at least they used to. Unfortunately, because of the alleged crimes here, I can't really listen to anything over here, so, you know, the guy decides to allegedly go out and shoot two people. It's crazy shit. It's actually the craziest thing that I've ever seen on the internet in quite a long time. Now, you may be wondering, but Muda, are the cops actually involved in this situation? Yes, the cops did actually get involved. In fact, very quickly, because it most definitely happened at the goddamn Bellagio, right? One of the biggest, like, populated areas on the Strip. Las Vegas Metro Police jump in. And they actually booked what appears to be a 41-year-old dumb fuck known as Manuel Ruiz, who, just decided to surrender to the actual cops, okay? Like, he surrendered himself. And now he's facing a pretty lengthy time, if he's tried, and is guilty, in a goddamn prison cell. Now, I'm not a lawyer or anything, but what I've seen on camera, the dumbest, like, you know, it's crazy because I've covered stupid people like Johnny Somali, Vitali, and all these other stupid IRL streamers and dumb fucks. But I've never seen somebody actually kill someone on camera, on YouTube Live of all places, right? Like, it almost feels like this is something that I would have seen on like the dark web or some stupid shit like that. I would have seen it on like an obscure platform, but unfortunately, this is like the extent of what happens when like YouTube beef gets way too far. So when you're looking at like good old Manny, you know, he's probably looking at, you know, the idea of this being premeditated, because obviously if this is something that's been brewing over like what appears to be a year, yeah, no shit, it's a premeditated hit. At least that's what I think, in my opinion. Again, I'm not a goddamn lawyer. Then, of course, you've got obviously reckless endangerment, because discharging a firearm in the public is clear and reckless, endangerment of everyone around you. And I would probably have to imagine, I would wager my left nut that the gun wasn't even like lawfully possessed. Because does Manny look like the kind of guy to get a goddamn like proper licensing for his gun? I don't think so. You know, you've probably got other things like, the murder charges. I mean, that's the biggest piece, right? Which is, again, a alleged double homicide of a 4,000 sub YouTuber, and unfortunately, what appeared to be his wife. Like, everything that I've seen about, you know, these two people seemed like they were okay, pretty nice individuals. And Manny just couldn't take the internet banter, and Manny couldn't appear to at least take the fact that his copyright trolling wasn't necessarily shutting down his biggest critics. You know, there's a lot of people that criticize me on the internet, and you know, there's ranges. Like, there's people that are like, I fucking hate you, Muda, but you know, it is what it is, and I slightly dislike you, Muda. And none of those people have ever driven me to, like, you know, ever considering, you know what, I'm gonna lock and load, and I'm just gonna head on over and just go to town. Like, I'm just gonna go squad wipe my biggest critics. No, actually, I saw it amongst the stupidest IRL Vegas live streamers. One specifically that goes out of his way to just fucking straight up allegedly shoot their shoot the people they're beefing with. Now, it's funny because you kind of look at Finney's channel, and like 9 months ago, he's just out there like exposing this guy, right? Chulo coming to the stage to tell the truth on Hood. Now, there's also been talk that Manny may have potentially been a live stream scammer, which I think was kind of the catalyst for what really prompted Finney to basically become his biggest online enemy. Now, again, to verify the validity, unfortunately, I don't really have access to Manny's archive of content since YouTube's taken it down, and he wasn't a prominent YouTuber enough for me to really verify how valid a lot of these scams were. And I think the scams were really relegated around, like, maybe scamming super chat donations, which I think is pretty much what I kind of got out of it. But yeah, you know, Finney was basically logging in. He was his biggest like archiver, right? And let's just be real with you, this Manny guy just couldn't take it, and he does something stupid. He shoots two innocent people. No matter what kind of beef you have over the internet, You should never escalate it to the point that a gun is brought in and you take somebody's life. That's just very obvious. Now, of course, obviously, look, at the end of the day, this should never have happened. It's an incredibly insane level of petty beef that got, a man and his wife killed over internet nonsense. Now, for Manny, Sin City, all right, this is a guy that, kind of had a good thing going. He had a whole channel. He had the super chats rolling in, and obviously, look, the more popular you're going to get, look, these guys were sitting at tens of thousands of subscribers. I'm sure there's probably 2 or 3 comments that come in and you'll probably end up getting an A-logger or a hater here and there. But, I'm somebody that sits at 3+ million subscribers. And I'll tell you right now, okay, I've had haters and people since my channel has begun, okay? And sometimes it can get to you, right? We're all goddamn humans. But, it should never get to the point that you actually act out in homicide, okay? Because thankfully, at least for Sin City Manny, even though that he's killed 2 people, I really hope the legal system puts him away behind bars. Probably, I think, for life at this point, because this is a double homicide. So Sin City, instead of exploring the streets of Las Venturas and enjoying the oyster bars and the caviar and all that bullshit you can do out in fucking Vegas, he is now going to be spending the rest of his life with a bunch of hard-piping men in prison that are probably going to take a whole chunk out of his sweet little ass. And, I've seen how tall this guy is. Okay, he's not going to last in there, that's for sure. But, yeah, it's a pretty tragic case of YouTube beef gone incredibly wrong. If, honestly, I'm blown away. I really am. This is insane. There's just no way to sugarcoat it. This is something they're going to be talking about in the true crime circuit down the road. But me, I'm still trying to process exactly what I saw on YouTube Live. Crazy shit. Hello, guys and gals, me Mudahar, and I really think Google search is beyond dead at this point. I think it's actually being actively destroyed by Google. Now, I made a video a couple months ago where I was kind of talking about how I think Google search is effectively not all the way there anymore. I think Google is actively ruining its search engine, and beyond ruining its search engine, I think Google is giving into the dead internet theory and just letting the internet completely demolish itself from the outside in. Now, look, the internet is something that I grew up experiencing, okay? I know for some of the young people in the audience, you probably experienced the internet, well after sites like YouTube were a thing. I mean, YouTube as a site is damn near, 20 years old at this point? There are videos on this platform that are 20 years old. Videos almost old enough to take to a bar and get plastered with, okay? That's the world we live in, all right? That's just reality, okay? We're getting older. But the thing about the internet, ladies and gentlemen, is back in the day, I swear to God, the internet used to be a lot more wholesome and more interesting than it is nowadays. Nowadays, it feels like the internet's mostly just 10 different websites, and we basically go to these 10 websites for all the information I guess we really need. But back in the day, going to internet communities and forums and groups was actually kind of the fun part, okay? And look, it's not that that shit doesn't exist anymore, it's that shit doesn't exist anymore in the same capacity or the same discoverability as it used to be back in the day. Now, this is a old website, museum list, websites back in the year 2000s. And of course, you've got bangers like Newgrounds, which still exists, but obviously, this is what Newgrounds used to look like back in the year 2000. Gaming websites like Counter-Strike, for instance, looked a lot different than gaming websites of today's day and age. And that shouldn't really be a shock to you. I guess most of these brands have become so corporate as opposed to where they were originally grassroots to begin with. Back in the day, you wanted to get access to a little bit of that Counter-Strike modification, you went right to the website, you clicked on cs71full.exe and prayed to God that no man in the middle came in and gave you that crazy malware. And the moment you saw that CNET Gamer Center Alliance download badge, you knew you were getting that seal of quality, baby. Even McDonald's used to be a lot simpler, okay? Going to McDonald's website and reading about, just their countries and their friends and the locators and the charities, it was just fun to see. There was a lot of effort put into making that HTML slap. And the thing about it is obviously if you want to live a rough approximation of this, there's a great game called, I think it's Hypnospace Outlaw, where you basically patrol the internet, but a lot of those websites kind of look similar to shit like this. This is when people were putting effort into making their websites stand out and be unique, okay? And that was something that I feel is a lost art. Now, to access a lot of these websites like Peeps Republic, where if you wanted to learn all about hip hop music, R&B, and even that shiny BMW X5 alongside that PlayStation 2. You know, websites like this existed. They were cool. They were interesting. Now, again, a lot of these websites, you know, still roughly exist. There are still communities, but back in the day, accessing them through Google was kind of the thing. You know, you needed to have a web search algorithm to basically browse the internet for communities like this. So how did web search work back in the day? Okay, Google, for instance, sent out little spider bots all over the internet. Now, the way a spider bot works is basically it just clicks on links upon links upon links. So for instance, it'll just click on this link and then it'll click on the link on the next page and it'll just crawl through the entire page until it can build up what the page is about, keywords, so on and so forth, and send that all the way back to the search engine. So when you look for, I don't know, BMW X5 or a combination of all these hip hop artists, you would be sent to Peeps Republic, okay? It would show up as one of the top ranking pages. And then, of course, an entire industry known as SEO started coming, and people just optimized their pages so that Google would show them in the first goddamn result. Now, this is how important Google was, and it's why Google became one of the biggest search engines in the world. And nowadays, I feel like in the big year past 2023, Google has completely demolished what made that search engine so great and has effectively tanked it to the point where I personally feel that it is nearly unusable, okay? So there's been a lot of talk about it. Google has effectively somewhat buried the internet alive in terms of utilizing constant artificial intelligence. And there's been a lot of research and there's been a lot of emails that have come out that have kind of shown that Google have basically went to the dark side of advertising and making money and effectively have fucking killed their search engine. Now, interestingly, when you go onto Google right now and you ask it, yo, what's the real shape of Earth? You know, one of the things you'll probably notice on the internet is like the AI overview. So Google, effectively to make your search even easier and make you not leave google.com for some fucking reason, is they want you to get all your AI information right here. So the real shape of Earth is not perfectly round, Muda, but rather a slightly flattened sphere, more accurately described as an oblate spheroid or geoid. Now, I'm not here to argue about the shape of the Earth. I think if you want to talk about the shape of the Earth, there's a lot of community, okay? Flat Earth Society. And thankfully, if you search exactly for what you're looking for, which is not exactly what search is all about, you know, generally speaking, not everyone has the keywords for what they're looking for. At least Google will sometimes spit out the actual, you know, communities that you can go to, forums where you can learn all about the craziest conspiracy theories out there. But I'm not here to relitigate, again, the shape of the Earth. What's interesting is those AI, you know, explanations. And basically what Google has effectively been doing is they've kind of been tossing all of these AI overviews, web overviews, and effectively have been throwing at some point even things like advertisement throughout it, okay? So generally speaking, one of the things that people have been kind of criticizing Google about, and rightfully so, is the constant push for sponsored articles, advertisements, AI overviews. It used to be that Google would provide you exactly the information you're looking for, but except now it looks like what Google likes to provide you is, again, AI possible hallucinations, which they definitely say may include mistakes, as like the first actual result. You know, it's really not uncommon that when people are looking for things on the internet, they usually type in their actual prompt, and you'll often see people put in words like Reddit right afterwards. And it's not that Reddit is like this crazy place that you can go to for all the information on the planet. It's just because people type in Reddit literally to go there and speak with actual human beings, or what at least are believed to be human beings, discussing these things in greater detail, oftentimes cutting through the miasma of misinformation and nonsense that exists all across the platform, okay? You know, how many times have you actually been searching for things on the internet and you always type in Reddit right afterwards? I mean, I think the fact that I've been doing this for probably 2 years now, maybe 3 at this point, is just a sign that shows you how bad the regular search has gotten when you have to search for something and then usually see what's on Reddit to get the actual answer you crave. And when you look into like how Google has had its relationship with Reddit, it almost makes it wonder why Google just doesn't turn entirely over to Reddit, basically at the back end, for searching anyways. If that's what I think most people are generally doing, at least that's what I do. Now, the AI overview was like really funny shit, for instance, like back like around, like I want to say a year ago, May of last year, one researcher, Sharon Gaffrey, who like researches AI at like, I think it's like Business Insider or something, or Bloomberg Business actually. She ended up like asking Google, how many Muslim presidents had the US had, all right? And this is to show you how bad the AI overview was, all right, initially. It would just be like, Barack Obama is the first Muslim president of the United States, elected in 2008. His Kenyan father, middle name and childhood in Indonesia, a majority Muslim country, led to speculation that he was a secret Muslim. Now, remember, okay, imagine, all right, just being somebody that has no fucking concept of US history, somebody that only reads headlines, which I think is like 99% of the internet out there. They will probably look at this first thing and be like, oh yeah, it's factual, dude. I mean, Google said so. When in reality, this is what we call a hallucination. It most likely went to some web page, probably AI generated web page, looked at it and built its AI summary on it. Okay, the AI literally fed off of most likely another AI, okay, probably inbred itself through it. And of course, when you took away that question mark, it then started to say the US has not had a Muslim president. Most presidents have been Christian. So again, in some cases, it'll spit the right answer, and it won't, based on allegedly you using proper fucking punctuation, okay? This is an example of why LLMs and AI overviews have basically been one of the worst things that I think Google has thrown out. And obviously, it's not all bad. There are times where I asked it, hey, look, this is something that I do when I switched over to like Linux. One of the first things I checked was, hey, can I see the best quality guide for OBS? Because there's differences underneath Linux. You want to get the best quality for recording. So Google would just jump in before giving you any web page. Basically, it would go to all these other websites, scrape their entire articles, and just regurgitate it for you. Now, the thing is, I even went to the website Google used for their AI overview, this OBS website, and I swear to God, I don't know what's up here, but I almost wonder if this also wasn't written by ChatGPT. Now, granted, the actual individual over here who's writing it is Olivia Brown. So I'm like, all right, this is Olivia Brown. There's somebody that studied journalism at the University of Texas. Olivia Brown is a writer and chief editor of obsbot.com. They've been writing since college. So, okay, all right, interesting. This is like, Olivia likes live streaming and vlogging, okay? Now, inside all this, I haven't actually seen any of Olivia's like Twitch, like pages. I haven't seen any vlogging video to look at. So I don't know if this Olivia Brown is even a real person. I decided to Google them a little bit. I was like, all right, where's this Olivia Brown? Well, it seems like they're a journalist and writer, and somehow they're also a business reporter for the Financial Post, okay? Their writing career spans various publications and online platforms. And then I go around and look through all the different versions of like this Olivia Brown, and I swear to God, aside from OBS Bot, I couldn't find this person. So I'm starting to actually question, is this a real human being? They probably could be, but generally somebody that has some level of an established footprint would show up. And basically me reading this, again, I have seen the same level of formatting thrown at me from any ChatGPT stuff. So did Google just throw me an extra ChatGPT client at me? Like, what's going on? Now, it's because of this that people have decided they found out ways to make Google not give you AI regurgitated slop, okay? And the way that you do it is you make the exact same post, but you add in minus AI. So what the minus AI does is it gets rid of all the AI shit. So then you actually get these other quality articles, or at least you think they might be quality, and you probably sit there and be like, all right, I'll probably deal with this, even though this may seem like it's AI generated too. You'll actually get the advanced settings guide from OBS. You might get more appropriate videos delivered towards you. Hell, you'll even get the Reddit subreddit link that'll probably be more helpful to you than anything else. Somebody in the comments here gave another actual guide to providing real actual quality information for making the best quality stream setup. It all goes back to Reddit. You know, again, it's really bad when the audience, when the creators, when thousands of people, granted this is not a whole heck of a lot, have to download the pre-AI search tool from the Chrome Web Store so that they can just auto-remove this dog shit pre-AI search results that is going all the way back to pre-2023 Google results to give people more original human-created content, or at least that's what it seems like they're giving. So even looking into like advertisements, one of the actual posts that was super duper interesting was right here from Web Designer Depot. They actually do show just how insane the ad problem ends up getting on Google, right? So for instance, this guy looks at washer and dryer, and the first thing that they end up getting is like a whole bunch of sponsored links, right? So obviously Google's going to tell you where you want to get some washers and dryers. But it's interesting that the first two links that are provided are not actually the best result, they're actually the sponsored result, which is effectively you paying to get to the top of a search result on Google, okay? And again, this doesn't factor in the quality or like whatever you're trying to bill to the actual person. It's just you paying to get to the top. It doesn't matter if you're making a good web page or not, you just pay to beat the system. And that's not really what a good search engine is all about. Now, one of the best articles that I read was by an individual known as Edward Zitron, who actually talked about this in depth. So this is a story of how Google search died and the specific people responsible for actually killing it. Now, this actually revolved around people looking into emails that were brought up in a courtroom battle between the Department of Justice and Google regarding antitrust cases, which again is something that a lot of these big tech companies in Silicon Valley are currently going through right now, because I feel like the government really is looking at the power that they have and trying to actually cut it, which, to be honest, I'm not against, and I don't think most people should be against at all. But in this entire article, one thing that he talks about was something called code yellow for something known as search revenue. So what the fuck was code yellow, for instance? Well, let's actually read the actual page provided over here, the two pages. So in Google, right, at google.com, between Jerry Dishler, a forwarded message to Prabhakar Raghavan, I want you to remember that name real quickly, and a whole bunch of these other people. Shiv and I are calling a code yellow for search revenue starting today. We've been steady weakness in the daily numbers and are likely to end the quarter significantly behind if we don't turn things around. This is material, non-public information, so please do not share this message broadly. Yeah, I could imagine why you don't want this shared around. So search query growth is significantly behind forecast, particularly on desktop. There's a chance that Chrome is a contributor to this weakness. So we would like a single owner from the search and Chrome teams to conduct urgent analysis to understand the nature of this weakness. So number 3, the timing of our revenue launches is slightly behind where it was last year. So this is where they're talking about the money that they're making through, again, the ad sales team. So basically the lining over here is that code yellow was effectively about them losing their search revenues. So what they said was the Google Ads exec, Dishler, wrote, the search team is working together to accelerate the launch of a new mobile layout by the end of May. That'll be very revenue positive, but that still won't be enough. Our best shot at making the quarter is if we get an injection of at least something % queries ASAP from Chrome. So then Dishler goes down, I care more about revenue than the average person, but think we can all agree that all of our teams trying to live in high cost areas, another, reduction in stock price loss will not be great for morale, not to mention the huge impact on our sales team. So the next paragraph, he expresses pride in Google's pure approach and claims he doesn't want to poison the culture of any team. So I guess they're trying to find a balance over here of like, hey, how do we make money and live in our nice, extravagant places and keep our millions of dollars and not, fuck up the search? There's got to be a way to have our cake and eat it too. So he's like, I don't want the message to be we're doing this thing because the ad team needs revenue. That's basically what you're saying. That's a very negative message. It is. Well, my question to you is, above all, what do we think is the best decision for Google overall? Obviously, the best decision for a company is chasing profits. But obviously, if that comes at the expense of all of our search experience, then maybe it's time all of us start looking elsewhere. Now, all of this is basically able to be read entirely public. You can read all of these emails that came out as part of this lawsuit against Google at this point. But one of the names that was fingered was Prabhakar Raghavan. Now, again, according to Google, this guy is one of the most foremost authorities on search. And he's basically had over 20 years of understanding research algorithms. So he's not somebody that's dumb. He's somebody that has actual knowledge underneath Google. He knows how search algorithms work. So according to this article, a quick understanding is one of the individuals involved in the story was Ben Gomes, who was apparently a hero instrumental in making things like search engines work, both as a product and as a business. But again, going down to Prabhakar Raghavan, who, they basically detailed what his old job was before the head of Google Search, the guy that has run Google Search into the ground, allegedly, according to this, the guy who is currently destroying the search, before he actually was a head of search at Yahoo from 2005 to 2012. And you can imagine how many people are using Yahoo at all. A tumultuous period that cemented its terminal decline and effectively saw the company bow out of the search market altogether. Remember, back in the day, Yahoo actually did did have a pretty sizable chunk of the search engine market. I believe at some point, according to this, it had 30% of the market share, which wasn't too far off from Google's 36.9%. Okay, imagine back in the day, people had the option. They could go to Yahoo or they could go to Google. Now, the only reason people go to Yahoo is for that secondary address to their favorite adult website. Now, this article is incredibly scathing, obviously, to this Raghavan character, who, again, if you look into it, there's actually good research provided by, the author of this page to really show you what, the history of this guy was. And it wasn't exactly as shiny as another individual who, again, is Ben Gomes, who is actually the person who is really the steward of creating Google search or creating search in general into what it is today. I think one important part is they've said that we've argued previously with good reason, continuing to complain about the state of Twitter under Elon Musk. But they'd argue that Raghavan, and by extension Sundar Pichai, who is the current CEO of Google, deserve as much criticism, if not more, for the damage they've done to society. Because Google is the ultimate essential place for online infrastructure, just like power lines and water mains are in the physical realm, which is important. Google is, like I said, an institution. When you destroy that institution, it's not a good situation, okay? When you ruin the ability to search in the future, it's not good. So again, Raghavan and his cronies worked to oust Ben Gomes, a man who dedicated a good portion of his life to making the world's information more accessible, in the process burning the Library of Alexandria to the ground so Pichai could make more than $200 million a year. Now, this is a pretty scathing read itself, and obviously later throughout the last year, like October 2024, literally Prabhakar Raghavan was actually relieved of duty as senior VP of search, and then they became Google's CTO, or I guess their chief technologist. Now, interestingly, the important part about this that you have to understand is Google search is effectively basically what put them on the map and still keeps them on the map to this day. There's a lot of things that Google provides, but I think first and foremost, we understand that Google's most important asset is the ability to search the internet. And through that, they sell ads, they sell you access into other parts of Google, right? Specifically Gemini, God knows what else. And there's other services like YouTube and whatnot that Google has that are very important to them, but obviously search is still first and foremost one of the most important things for them on the internet. I believe it's one of the reasons, of course, why they're, I think still right now, the #1 most accessed website in the world. But I think reading through these DOJ emails and the correspondence between them shows that obviously they care a lot more about people getting into advertising than actually providing good quality actual search. Which I think is just a goddamn shame at this point, honestly, considering the fact that Google is something that I think many people used for just the hell of it. And honestly, the thing about it is I wouldn't be making this video if there wasn't actually some level of alternative at least out there. There are other search engines too, things like Brave Search, which I wouldn't even recommend, but it's still a lot better. There's obviously Start Page, which gets you, I believe, Google and Bing searches without the whole concept of them peeking into your privacy. This actually does give you private search. And then, of course, you've got things like DuckDuckGo, which has always been pushed on me from things like the Tor browser, for instance. I think one of the big things about search in general that's kind of threatened Google is the way that a lot of people search for stuff in general. There's been a big trend that I was reading that people get a lot of their information from things like TikTok these days. They'll actually search for how to do things on TikTok, much like how when I was younger, we used to search on YouTube for how to do certain things. But one of the things that honestly was super duper interesting that I was reading online was how much people use ChatGPT as opposed to searching now on Google. I mean, just the idea of going to ChatGPT and asking normally, where did the time traveler John Titor under the name Time Travel O, which I knew the name here, post? What website was it? Is there an archive available? And literally within a second, I was actually given real information, screenshots even, provided to me by this ChatGPT with full sources and everything. In fact, several sources that I could dig through that had all of this information that it parsed together and fed me. And when I asked it, is there a way I can access those old BBS forums? It even gave me a link to it, which again, compared to all the sponsor shit that I was reading, was a lot better for me to just click on and actually start researching John Titor, one of the biggest, pieces of time travel lore that you could find, time travel conspiracies that you could look into. And again, compared to what Google used to be, at least here I was actually sent to an old school forum from back in the day. Looks like something from back in the day where people are still talking in the year 2025. This guy's going, holy shit, I met a psychic. Was she in the view of this time during the In 2024, I was walking down the street and a guy just walked up to me and said, she's got her eyes on you and you're going to be together. You're going to help her and she's going to help you. And that's all I have to say about that. And he started walking off and I said, who is she? And he said, the girl of your dreams, and walked off. Can any time traveler or psychic look into the future and tell me your exact name in my inbox? Dude, I miss this side of the internet so goddamn much, bro. Literally coming across people that have ranks like Chrono Cadet, Rift Surfer, and Temporal Novice, actually exploring time travel and psychic behavior. This is that internet I so desperately crave and miss. And again, just searching here, it took me 1 second to go and just throw myself into like an LLM, which generally speaking is not a one-to-one like replacement for Google search, but it just shows you how bad Google search has gotten when literally the alternatives are these ChatGPT like interfaces. I mean, even going to Google Gemini, taking this exact prompt that I gave it will give me a better result than anything Google will actually provide me. You know, Google search is kind of a dying breed, ladies and gentlemen. I really feel like in the last couple of years, you know, really noticing the pattern of me searching for anything on this like site and then adding in Reddit afterwards is just a showcase that, you know, I'm actually craving for real human information to like sift through, as opposed to Google constantly like regurgitating an AI article that's probably regurgitated from another AI article over and over again. And to be honest with you, it's to a point where like, you know, I wasn't really a huge ChatGPT user, but like even just switching over to like LLMs has given me the ability to search, or at least in the same capacity as I've been using the internet back in the days of like, you know, 2016, 2017, even before that. You know, Google used to be like this internet institution, but honestly, given the quality of the search and Google's focus on advertisements and AI overviews and just regurgitating nonsense instead of providing people with exactly what they want based on true, actual proper search rankings, has really been one of the biggest shots to the foot that I've ever seen. Ladies and gentlemen, if you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike if you dislike it. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. I am out. Hello guys and gals, me Mutahar, and I don't know what's up with this PewDiePie fella, but man, he's gotten a lot more bass post-retirement. I'm done with Google. Now normally these videos can do really well, you know, because some people, like you, probably want to know, how do I make my life more private? Muta, how do I get rid of those big tech overlords, those goddamn lizards at Silicon Valley from peeking into my life every single day? Now, before we continue, one thing I want to say is some of our videos are actually showing up on Spotify. So if you want to have a different platform to watch some of the long form content on, especially considering that some of the conspiracy stuff, maybe the dark web stuff in the future, maybe haunted gaming, a lot of the content that I'm working on can also be viewed on Spotify. So if you want a different platform to listen to the stuff on while you do something else, while you play a game, while you work out, while you're driving, it also does have video as well. So don't feel that you're missing out on an entire component. It's all there on Spotify. So whether you listen to this on the web browser or you look at it on the app, it's a totally new platform for you to at least watch the content on. So if you want to check it out, link is in the description below. That said, let's get back to the PewDiePie and the self-hosting. Well, you know, PewDiePie made a video over here where it does pretty well, and he's talked about de-Googling his life. Now, plenty of content creators have talked about de-Googling, me too. And sometimes, depending on how YouTube's, you know, terms of service goes with harmful and dangerous software, aka software that cuts us away from Google's ownership, sometimes you can get that community guideline strike. So I'm going to be a little bit careful in this video. I'm going to be like a tactical ninja trying to show you how you can cut the big tech overlords, you know, all within reason, of course, here. Now, ladies and gentlemen, he made this 23-minute long video, and he covered actually a lot of good points into it, right? Now, obviously, he's got the tinfoil hat on, and I kind of like the joke here, because everyone that I've ever talked to about privacy has always said the one thing, if you have nothing to hide, why do you go through these steps, Muta? They already have all my information. Yeah, that's true, but why are you making it, like, easy? You know what I mean? I've always really said this to somebody. Imagine if you left your door unlocked, or are you okay with, like, somebody just coming into your house, sitting inside there, and just watching what you do every single day? Would you be comfortable with that? If so, then leave everything unlocked, okay? You're just a different kind of freak. You know, 12 years ago, there was a program known as Prism from the NSA that tapped into users' data on Apple, Google, and plenty of these services. And if this alarmed you back then, I would only say that it's gotten worse now. Again, your privacy is always being threatened for the reasons of national security or some other nonsense. And I don't think we should live in a world where we should accept letting these companies peek more into our life than they really should be allowed to. You, as a human being, have a right to privacy and your safety. And if you want to engage in the world of technology, you don't have to necessarily give up everything just to live in the current world that we're in. So I wanted to look at some of the things that PewDiePie kind of talked about over here and just kind of, elevate it from here. So one thing that he basically did was he immediately cut out Google's default search engine.
Your search engine right now, you can do it now while I keep yapping. Just go to your browser settings, find the search default browser and change it to DuckDuckGo. It's a search engine that doesn't track what you do. It just works. Boom.
So this is actually a really great choice, and bonus points for PewDiePie over here for being a furry fox user. Now, I'm not a Firefox person myself. I actually use Brave browser, and the thing about any browser is realistically the important thing that you can do is pick something that is already privacy focused. Now, inside privacytest.org, you can get a pretty good idea about which browser takes your privacy seriously. Now, for instance, if you're on good old Macintosh, apparently it seems Safari does pretty good on the actual state partitioning tests, and it starts to fail when you get down to some of the miscellaneous stuff. But when it comes to Brave, that's a pretty good alternative to the standard Google Chrome nonsense that you would get. So just off the bat, if you really care about your privacy, I think this is a great option. But let's say you're like somebody that does not like the concept of using Chrome, okay? You're not a Chromey homie. You can actually just keep using Firefox, which is pretty good, or you can switch to something like LibreWolf, which is a bit more privacy focused, but keeps that Firefox engine. Now, when it comes to your actual defaults, PewDiePie makes a pretty good point to tell you about switching from Brave browser. Now, most people don't switch from defaults, which is one of the reasons why companies like Google pay companies like Apple billions of dollars a year to make sure that they are the default. In fact, they literally just had a court discussion about this when it comes to monopolization, because Google literally was able to starve out their competition and keep a market share because literally they were the browser that everyone was defaulted to. And most people don't even go through the entire setting page to actually change their default. I mean, seriously, my dad, he's somebody that buys a cell phone, immediately starts browsing the internet as best of his ability, and he probably doesn't even know that there are options to change your browser engine, or not browser engine, but your search engine. And the thing is, he probably would ask you, why? Isn't Google just good enough? Now, the thing is, if you go to your search engine over here, you can actually change underneath Brave to a whole bunch of different options. So if you want to use Brave search, you can. I personally don't prefer it. DuckDuckGo is a great option. But of course, Start Page is the option that I'm using. And of course, you can change it for, again, those incognito tabs as well. So you can mix and match. But the thing is, I think you can go a step further than using Start Page or even DuckDuckGo. What if, ladies and gentlemen, you could actually just host your own search engine? Well, that's exactly what I wanted to do over here, okay? So one of the things that, I feel like PewDiePie can kind of focus on is something known as Docker, which I'm already sure that he's done if he's home labbing. Now, for anybody that doesn't know what Docker is a actual containerization software. So you know how I always talk about virtual machines, but what if you want to spin up a virtual machine, but you don't want to deal with all of the bloat that comes with spinning up an entire virtual machine of Windows? Well, what Docker does is it loads up a virtual machine of Windows or any operating system, but it effectively spins up just the most important stuff that you need to get things going. So you save a shit ton on resources, and you kind of get the benefits of those virtual machines in a lot of cases. So in this AI, I even asked it, Docker is a tool for running your applications inside containers. These containers package all the dependencies and code your app needs to run into a single file. Now you might be like, Muda, you're using ChatGPT? No, I'm actually running an AI model locally on my system with full web searching capabilities, all without ever sending my information to the rest of the world. And all of this is actually done through Docker, and I'll guide you through how it works. Now, let's say you're on something like Windows. You want to download Docker Desktop for any of your systems, whether you're a Mac user, a Windows user, or a Linux user. And once everything is set up and ready to go, it should look something close to this. Now, I've already got a few containers set up, but when you open up the terminal over here, a lot of these places you go to, you can just drag and drop the actual terminal commands they provide, and it will actually run within here, and it'll eventually have like all these containers set up. So I've got a few things running right over here, but let me start off with other software to run. Now, once you get things like SeerXNG, this is actually a free open source internet meta search engine which aggregates results for up to 247 search services. Users are neither tracked nor profiled. Additionally, SeerXNG can also be used over Tor for online anonymity. Now, if you want to install this, one thing you can go down over here is the Docker container. So again, going to the Docker container, you can follow this guide and get things effectively up and running within minutes. Now, inside this Docker container, once you have SeerXNG basically like ready to go, you can hit that good old play button and it'll actually spin up the container for you. Once you see that green light, you're good to go. Now, of course, one thing you can do is where it says ports over here, you can actually access this localhost like domain, which is where the actual like Docker container is hosted. So by opening this up, you can see that I'm presented with SeerXNG. Now, if I go to preferences real quickly, the important part that you probably want to do just to make this comply with YouTube is obviously for engines, definitely disable everything regarding Google, right? Because I don't know how this works in regards to Google's terms of services, but you want to just basically remove that just simply to be compliant with obviously Google's TOS. I don't want to be promoting anything that would be against their search engine and then risk this video getting taken down. But if you look at all the other services that are not Google related, like for instance, Bing Images, Brave Images, you can tick on any of these engines that you want. And once all of this stuff is done, you can basically save it and get ready to go. So now that you have this browser, right? Let's say I want to look up, I don't know, Arch Linux, for instance, right? Guide install Reddit, or just the guide install. As long as I hit enter over here, it may take a little bit longer to go, but generally speaking, I have gotten a response time of 1 second, and I would say it's a little bit better than Google search because it's amalgamating from hundreds of different search engines. And you kind of bypass some of the possible censorship that certain things like certain services like Google might invoke on their actual service. Now, one thing you probably also noticed over here is I don't have sponsored pages. I don't have ads or anything. And that's not because I have an ad blocker, it's because I'm locally hosting my own search engine. I don't actually have to worry about any fucking ads. This is my search engine. It's not any other search engine. Now, the important thing about privacy here is I'm not sending out my actual identifiable information to any service. What this is doing, SeerXNG, is it's actually sending out anonymized queries. So none of these engines really know anything. They're not tracking me. They're not doing anything. And once you get this set up and going, you can honestly just forget about it. Like, it literally is this easy to get your privacy back. Like, it takes maybe 10, 15 minutes to get a Docker container going. And once all of that pain is done, you can just have it ignored. You can just have it minimized somewhere on your computer forever and never have to think twice about the back end of this, right? This is the beauty of self-hosting. You go through the pain just a little bit, and then all of a sudden, it's just easy.
Imagine you bought a physical keyboard and it was secretly connected to the internet, sending big tech everything you type. We're not doing anything weird, just trust us, bro. It's so messed up. On Graphene, I still have the option, and if I want to take a Google app, I can starve it, put it in one of those. I still don't like that I use a Google app, but no, actually it's good. Google is at my mercy.
So inside over here, he talks about like Graphene OS, which is a great alternative that you can have to like standard Android. Now, for anybody that doesn't know, mobile phones, no matter who you buy, if it's definitely stock from iOS, you know that Apple's inside your phone. And if you're buying from Android, you know that Google has a fucking actual dive into it. Now, what do? There's options for you to go buy a Linux phone, but I'll be completely fucking honest with you. If you want to actually use your phone with applications and have other things that aren't just a cumbersome Linux-style system on your phone, that's not a great option, okay? I don't think it's a perfect option. I think it's probably for people who are really, really at risk and need like complete hardware kill switches and just communication services. But if you want to actually use your phone with all of the doodads that modern smartphones provide, then yes, Graphene OS is a great alternative. Now, the thing is, you can't just install this to every single phone. So if you're somebody that has like, I think a Samsung device, you may be a little bit too locked out. But generally, if you buy like Google Pixels, or I think even like OnePlus phones, a lot of those come with the ability for you to install this operating system. And the best part about it is you get a lot of privacy features out of the box. So for instance, let's say you do install a Microsoft or Google application and they do come with some invasive little privacy busting features. Graphene OS literally can starve those entire systems with its permission system, of course, just to prevent them from doing things that you probably don't feel comfortable with, right? Like, the thing you have to understand about like a lot of these big tech companies is that they literally just take severe advantage of your system. They take severe advantage of people without ever realizing that, and those people don't know that there is an alternative. There is a way out, right? Like, they just are comfortable. They have to be comfortable. I think they have to be because the system tells them, hey, we need access to your location services, or we need access to this private part of your phone. But with things like Graphene OS or any of these privacy-focused OS, I even showed you guys how to make a de-Googled like operating system and install it and flash it to the actual like Android phones with the original Android source code. And the thing about it is, once people realize that they can do this once, go through the pain a little bit, and then all of a sudden everything just works out, they have the ability to actually kind of containerize and lock these services down, then it becomes a whole different fucking ballgame. Then use it all you want. I may not be a Windows user, but I definitely use Windows when I lock it inside a virtual machine. So I can use it for playing certain video games or using really old Windows software super easily, and it just runs in a VM. I containerize it. Now, one thing that I found really impressive too, obviously PewDiePie talked a little bit about like cloud hosting, like hosting your own like files, right? Now, I think backups are great, but, you know, relying on Google, relying on any of these services to store your files is a little bit creepy in the sense that you never really get privacy. Every time you upload your information to services like Google or, you know, OneDrive or Mega or really any of these services, you kind of have to trust them to be properly encrypting your stuff. Now, in general, you probably heard of really wild stuff on Google where, like, you know, people were, falsely flagged as being predators because what happened was Google decided to like look into their like files, and they were basically scanning some of the images, and some of the images tripped their CSAM protections. Now, obviously, down the road, these people actually didn't have images for nefarious reasons. Some of them were just medical pictures that they shared with doctors, regarding their children, right? But it kind of shows you that in certain cases, a lot of these services don't really treat your privacy when it comes to internet files. Now, in some cases, this might be good because maybe they can stop a really sick individual, but I really don't subscribe with the mentality that just because you want to stop a few bad people, we should be giving up our actual rights to privacy. But there are options for you to use things like Nextcloud, which you can have running on local computers. For instance, this is a streaming computer that I used to use back when I was like a more active streamer on YouTube. It would just be a separate system that I would feed my video into and just send out to YouTube. But the thing is, obviously, it's a pretty powerful system, maybe not enough anymore to game on, but definitely fast enough to run servers. So for instance, running things like Nextcloud, and even when it comes to media, right? I can run things like Jellyfin, so instead of relying on all these cloud services, I can run all of my movies and music around my house through that computer, just tuck it away somewhere, connect it to my router, and just have it feeding my movies. When it comes to storing my files locally, a few hard drives in that thing, I can use Nextcloud and basically have it serve as cloud storage. But the other thing is, what if you're somebody that, maybe you're like, I do need cloud storage because I want to have my stuff somewhere as a backup, right? Striped across the world. Well, there are tools like Cryptometer. And if you don't know what Cryptometer is, it allows you to keep that privacy all across all of these commercial services. Now, the way that this works is before you send your information off to Google, right, Google Drive, what Cryptometer will do is it'll actually, encrypt your information locally on your system and then send it off. So even if Google or Microsoft or any of these services wanted to peek into your shit, well, congratulations, you've encrypted the ever-loving shit out of it, and you yourself possess the keys to decrypt that information regardless of where it's stored. And all of this is freely available. You go to their website, you basically go with the free plan, and you can set this up for Windows, Mac, Linux, Android, iOS, whatever, okay? Create a vault, securely store your files, sync it up with all these Google Drive services, and you're good to go, okay? It's just that easy, all right? And again, like the theme of this video, you go through a little bit of pain for 10 minutes, and then you're good to go. Now, one thing that PewDiePie talked about in his video that really excited me was when he talked about AI.
But I got curious and, I built my own computer not long ago and I spent a lot of money on it. Why don't I just see if I can run it myself? It's a beast. So I set up a local language model called Mixtral. Emphasis on local, which means it runs on my computer completely offline. It's beautiful. Now I can search whatever I want. And I can ask it dumb questions like, why is my left toe bigger than my right toe? And no one knows about it. Not Google.
You know what? He's actually 100% right. AI is not an evil tool, okay? I don't think that AI is necessarily something that's going away. But, there's a big difference between running AI locally and using, ChatGPT, Gemini, all these services. Now, chances are if you go to your phone, you probably fuck around with an AI tool. And the thing is, when you go to an AI tool, everything that you send obviously goes onto their servers, and it stays there for an amount of time that I guess they consider to be important for them, right? It's a big data collection tool. But what if you wanted to use some of these AI models and not give your information up willy-nilly, right? Well, I challenge that a lot of you guys that actually have pretty decent gaming computers can run a AI model locally and even use it to do searches online. You can have the best of your world. So for instance, one of the things that I like to promote here is Ollama. And depending on what you use, there are plenty of models that come with this. For instance, if you go to their model page, you can download DeepSeek, you can download Gemma, you can download Qwen, you can download Llama. And each of these have different parameters, so the higher your parameter is, the better the AI. But generally speaking, even with something like a 12 billion parameter model that can run on a lot of GPUs, or even a 4 billion, or sometimes you can get a quantized model, which is slightly lower quality, but it definitely crunches down on resources. Installing any of these and running them is exactly, the alternative to relying big tech to store all of your AI shit. So how does it install? Well, you go to the actual page, you go to this download option, and regardless of what you use, whether it be Windows, where you can download the tool from them, Mac OS a tool, but if you're on Linux, this one command that you copy, and you open that super spooky terminal, all you do is paste that in there and it just installs for you. Now, of course, after that, what you can do is you can go to Ollama and you can serve it. But the other thing you also want to have is an NVIDIA container toolkit if you use an NVIDIA GPU, just because you want to have GPU acceleration. It just speeds up these AIs like crazy, okay? GPUs are important. Now, of course, the other thing you want is Ollama, pull, and then, of course, you can pull the specific AI you want. So, for instance, if I want Gemma 3, I type in Gemma 3, give a little colon, and if I want the 12 billion parameters, I download the 12 billion. If I want the 7, I download the 7 billion parameters. So, of course, once all of that is done, you're still not all the way there. There's something known as Open Web UI, which is, again, the actual tool we use to get access to these AIs in a super easy manner. So go to their website, and of course, all you do is you get the Open UI. You basically follow their instructions on GitHub. So for instance, if you already had that Docker installed, which we did in the beginning, you can basically go all the way, get this first command, and open up your Docker container and just drag that shit right in there. And of course, once it's done, you'll have Open Web UI. So once you hit play on that, you'll notice that it's got me a little like localhost, and as soon as I hit enter, boom, it's good to go. And because we installed those models, we can basically load up whatever we want. Now, for instance, if I ask it, hey, explain the stock market to me. And of course, if I hit enter, it's basically back-ended to the AI, and of course it breaks down the stock market, right? It actually gives me what I want. But you're like, Muda, what if you wanted to Google search for you? Well, young Padawan, it's pretty fucking easy. if you go over here and just basically access your administration panel, you can go to the settings page, and underneath web search, you can actually give it a web search request engine. So for instance, you just toggle on web search, and then in the engine, you have all these things to pick from. So you can go to Google, you can do Brave, you can do fucking Bing for whatever reason. But let's say that you already had that Seer XNG. Well, you open up Seer XNG, and as long as you feed it access to that Docker alongside search and query, you should basically be able to use Seer XNG as a search engine inside this. Now remember, Seer XNG already amalgamates information from multiple different sources. So this is basically doing crazy level of searches for you, all in an AI. Now the thing is, if there are issues, there are updated guides. I highly recommend you always follow the actual guides from the site, because sometimes things can change per even the smallest update, and you probably have to think a little bit out of the box. You probably have to change some things around. But once you got web search enabled, all you can do is just tap that web search. Like for instance, if I ask it something like, what is happening with SteamOS beating Windows in gaming? And of course, as soon as I hit enter, it generates the query, starts searching the web, and it even pulls together all of the actual sources you need. And all of this is done locally on my system. This stuff that you would probably have to pay a subscription for with certain services on the internet, this is doing completely for free, right? And of course, it even allows me to do follow-up questions. It's actual AI running entirely local. Now, let's say you also wanted to do this on iPhone and Android. There's plenty of free applications for iOS and especially for Android that allow you to install models on your local phone that maybe aren't even as good as this, but they run completely locally. So let's say you don't even have an internet connection, but you still want to have access to some AI tool. You can self-host local AI and never have to worry about the privacy implications. One cool thing about these AIs that you can do is you can actually use them to transcribe like entire images. So for instance, this image that I got from the Stop Killing Games video, let's say I wanted to transcribe all this text real quickly. Well, inside this entire thing, I can actually just feed it this image and I can ask it, can you transcribe this text for me? And then of course, probably should turn off web search because there's no reason to search the internet. And of course, as soon as I hit enter, ladies and gentlemen, whoa, it actually does that all for me. It's kind of fucking crazy, dude. You know, if anything, the AI is all great if you're using it completely locally, all right? And again, most of you guys actually have some pretty cool, like, you know, computers. You can run this stuff locally. Now, the world of self-hosting is pretty much alive and well, and I really do like appreciate watching like PewDiePie kind of enter the home lab arc. I knew this was going to happen since he switched to Linux, and I definitely knew this was going to happen, like, you know, because it happened to me, right? It happened to pretty much anybody. Once you start using things like Linux and you start using open source systems, you really enable a tinkering part of your brain, and that's one of the reasons also I wanted to make this video. Look, I'm not like some crazy like expert just out of nowhere, okay? A lot of this required tinkering and learning myself. And that's kind of the whole fun of life, right? Like learning new things. And sometimes it's good to be a little bit of a rebel, you know, stick it to the fucking man watching you every single day. So hopefully you learn something about containerizing your software and even setting up local AIs. And you can go further from here. You know, if let's say you want to, you know, do deep research, which is a cool new tool that a lot of AIs have brought. Well, you can use Docker containers and all the tools I showed you to do local deep AI research. So again, you don't need to pay these companies big money to not only spy on you, but give you access to stuff that you can freely put together. Sure, maybe it not be the exact same quality as something like ChatGPT 4.0, but if it's good enough to the point where you get your privacy, you get to have a little bit of your cake and eat it too, then I would lose a little bit of that quality for the privacy aspect alone. And because this is open source stuff anyways, you can bet your ass that a lot of people producing these models, whether they be big tech companies like Facebook, Google, or DeepSeek in China, they're putting all the efforts to beat out each other. And when they're all competing, buddy, we all win down the road. And of course, honestly, when it comes to storing your information on the internet or browsing the web or having your privacy with ad blockers, there's a lot of free open source alternatives that are all around us. And realistically, once you can get past the 10-15 minutes of pain it takes, maybe the day, to just set this stuff up once, I guarantee you will never have to worry about it occasionally, like once a year when you update and like move things around. this is a level of freedom that you can have right now today. And you can actually learn something. And let's say down the road you want to actually make money out of these skills, you can probably earn an entire good living. You can probably start looking into a career of computer security or anything related to this down the road. These are good skills to have, especially as the world gets deeper and deeper into to all of this. But ladies and gentlemen, PewDiePie just getting fucking based, dude. And let me tell you something right now. It's good to de-Google yourself, and it's actually really easy to de-Google. So this video has been a little bit long, but hopefully you kind of learned something out of it. Hopefully you set up a few models yourself. Hopefully you set up a few search engines on your own system that allow you to be private and enjoy the internet without having big tech completely rail you in the ass when it comes to your privacy. If you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike it if you dislike it. I am out. Oh no, YouTube is testing more of those unskippable ads. Oh, that's my favorite part about YouTube, man. It's the advertisements. Now, I made a video about a week ago. I talked about YouTube Premium, and they had a light option that, you pay a little bit and you still somehow get advertisements on some videos. Now, I think, when you're paying any amount of money, all right, you should probably get the ad-free stuff. Maybe that should be like a minimum. Otherwise, what's the point of giving you some ads and not giving you others? But, this whole situation just keeps getting more and more annoying, okay? YouTube has just more non-skippable ads. So, for instance, if you don't know, on YouTube, there's tons of ads, all right? You'll get ads above the recommended videos to the side. You'll get, a lot of your bumper ads, which thankfully after 5 seconds, you should in theory be able to skip. But let's say that you can't skip certain ads. Well, then you have to watch the whole thing all the way through. And sometimes if you're on TV, sometimes if you're on cell phones, you might get more than one unskippable ad to deal with, okay? So it feels that YouTube has kind of become more and more like cable television. And I understand it. YouTube's business is pretty massive, all right? It's not easy to run a huge video sharing website like YouTube, simply because there's so much content that's uploaded to it every day, and it's kind of insanely impressive for a lot of content creators that we can just upload our videos for free, and YouTube will let anybody around the world watch them in the highest possible quality that we can basically upload, right? Obviously, the highest quality a video streaming website can provide. Now, of course, to go forward into it, obviously, this is not a good thing, okay? For a lot of the consumers watching, you probably hate it every time you have to skip through videos. I have completely stopped watching YouTube channels that have way too many ads, all right? Usually I'll slap on an hour-long video, and I'll be playing a video game or doing some work or writing another script or doing research. And generally, if after every 5 minutes I see a goddamn ad and I have to alt-tab out of whatever I'm doing, go to the second screen and hit the skip ad button, if I do that more than maybe 4 times, I am never watching the channel again, okay? Simply because I have no issue with the content creator, I just have an issue with the amount of advertising that I'm seeing, okay? Watching cable television was something we all did when we were younger as children. But I think as we got older and we started to play around with the internet and we started using ad blockers all over the internet, okay, as recommended by the FBI, as recommended by plenty of cybersecurity firms, we started experiencing the internet and all the information without the nuisance of fucking cable TV. Nowadays, it's pretty difficult to kind of watch any streaming service without at least a trough of advertisements thrown your way. Now, I wouldn't personally have too much of an issue with this, but one of the big things about YouTube is obviously the ad quality isn't entirely there. Now, I have to censor this ad, but I found it, and, it wasn't my video, but I've seen other people talk about it. This is an advertisement that is running on YouTube. Now, I have to censor it because it is from an adult video, okay? Somebody put an adult video into the YouTube ad engine, and the ad is for something called one-on-one video chat, name, chat, and fun. Stop being lonely, call me. So basically, some meet and fuck service has basically just come into YouTube and advertised blatant adult videos. Now, if I put an adult video on my channel, you know what would happen? I would get a community guideline strike, and I would rightfully get that community guideline strike. But when you can do it in the ad system, for some reason, it's a whole different ball game of moderation. It's crazy? I just tried looking up the app on the App Store, and I think it just straight up got banned. Because it's just straight up another one of these like adult porn apps on the actual app store, which typically go up and down. So, if Apple's doing their moderation, I would expect at least Google to do some level of moderation for dog water like this. Now, one of the things that, prevent me from talking about every single solution to, the internet harmful like advertisement pipeline, at least on YouTube, is something known as the harmful or dangerous content policy. Now, there's been plenty of YouTubers hit with this, and we're going to go through a power round of history real quick. But this is a guideline, that we have to follow as YouTubers, because if we basically get 3 strikes, we're out of the game for good, okay? Now, some of these include, acts that are harmful or dangerous, right? Minors participating in dangerous activities. It all makes sense, right? Like if you're, doing something stupid on the internet, something like jackass worthy, YouTube's probably not going to be a fan of it. Hey, weapons content. Are you teaching people how to perform activities that are meant to kill or severely harm others? Yeah, I can't upload videos where I teach you how to squad wipe a bunch of people with a firearm. That would be a no-no. Explosives? I can't teach you how to play with C4. That makes sense. Firearms policies, for a lot of gun tuber channels, they have to be really safe with the guns they show. Otherwise, YouTube's probably not going to be a huge fan. Now, alongside Semtex, C4, firearms, and all the other kinds of dangerous shit is all stuff related to computers. Now, when I do things like, computer, like virus investigations, or when I talk about, cybersecurity stuff, and I walk through how things work, I have to be really careful. Sorry, I'm a little bit sick, but I have to be really careful, because if I demonstrate how to use a computer or information technology with the intent to steal credentials, compromise personal data, and cause serious harm, I get a community guideline strike. It's kind of like, putting up like a show like Breaking Bad, and you want to make it look realistic, but you don't want to upload an episode where you actually teach people how to make methamphetamines. So generally speaking, if you watch any of my content regarding computer safety and security, I basically cover as much as I can, and I do omit crucial steps or sources so that, anybody watching my video can't just use it as a criminal tutorial, so to speak. Now, of course, there's other options like bypassing payment for digital content or services. So you can't teach people how to pirate movies and video games on the internet, right? Now, a couple days ago, I talked about how Ubisoft butt-fucked me with a game that I bought called Splinter Cell Conviction. And in the video, I pretty much have admitted that I had to go out into the internet and download a copy of that game. Now, I didn't teach people how to do it. I'm not teaching you how to pirate video games. I'm just giving you my personal experience without teaching you or telling you how to bypass. So I didn't break any community guideline strikes. But the thing is, this is not as cut and dry. For a lot of content creators, for like Linus Tech Tips, for instance, he was talking about, de-Googling your life. Basically omitting as much of Google's tracking and Google software as much as you can on their platform, YouTube. Now, inside this video, he did get taken down, and he actually explained why he got taken down. This happened 9 months ago, so listen carefully.
August 20th, we published De-Google Your Life Part 2, and after about 2 weeks and 1.4 million views, YouTube took the video down and gave us a warning for violating their Terms of Service, or TOS. But why? I mean, we've uploaded numerous other videos that cover topics like ad blocking, VPNs, and alternative YouTube clients. What is it that made this video specifically harmful or dangerous?
So he makes a pretty good point. All right, I made plenty of videos where, one video that I made was Piehole, right? Where I walked you guys through how to basically add a network-wide ad blocker to your system. Now that video has absolutely done pretty well on my channel, and to show you how this stuff works is a little Raspberry Pi that I ended up buying. It's a one-time investment where I set it up with something called Piehole, and I was able to basically block tons of trackers. So for instance, right over here, you can see that I was blocking things like live.com, I was blocking stuff from Adobe, I was blocking stuff from Google, I was blocking a lot of domains that genuinely were not helpful to me whatsoever, okay? These were domains designed to effectively track me on the internet or serve me malicious advertisement, which if you're on my computer or anybody that accesses my network, you'll find out very quickly that you cannot access any of these ads. If you connect to my Wi-Fi, you get routed through this little Raspberry Pi, which protects my actual users from getting hit. So for instance, every single client on my home network, well, every single one of those clients is actually protected. So all of their queries, millions of them at times, are all protected by this Pi hole. Now, obviously, YouTube didn't really care about that, and honestly, they haven't cared about it. But for Linus, what he showcased was something that is a severe no-no.
Part of the answer in this explainer paragraph that says that this category applies to videos which violate YouTube's terms of service or, emphasis here, encourage other users to do so, which includes content that provides instructions on how to download YouTube videos in an unauthorized manner. There's a lot to unpack here, starting with that I don't understand how that is harmful or dangerous, except maybe to Google's bottom line.
You actually answered it perfectly fine. Now, before you start to wonder if the internet Gestapo is all around you, right? Like, hey man, are you allowed to talk about this dangerous software? Now, of course, obviously, I would personally say that a, computer virus software, like WannaCry, a ransomware that can take away your information at any given second, is actually harmful and dangerous. But do I think that something like a YouTube download tool is necessarily harmful or dangerous? No. Unless, of course, you're YouTube's bottom line. Then, of course, ad blocking, downloading videos for personal consumption is a no-no. YouTube provides you the ability to download videos, provided they, either are your own videos and you can download them from the studio, or if you have YouTube Premium, you can just go to any video and you can download them with the mobile application, right? Which, again, I've done briefly when it comes to, like, flights, right? Like, I would just download like a 2-3 hour video from some content creator and I would just have that to watch as I'm sitting inside a fucking pressurized tube flying from coast to coast. But yeah, this is something that obviously YouTube was not comfortable with, and even for other creators, for instance, right? Like Jeff Geerling, who made a video called I Replaced My Apple TV with a Raspberry Pi. So what he did in this video was he took away the Apple TV, right? The Apple TV that you can just go buy at Best Buy, you can stick in front, and you can just watch all your 4K dog shit on. What he did was he took his own movies, right, his own TV shows, he backed them up to his computer, and he routed them through that Raspberry Pi. So with that, or not Raspberry Pi, it was routed through a home server. The Raspberry Pi became a front end that he would use to basically access these movies on the internet. Now, of course, the reality of it is that I think a lot of people do this. I do this myself. Like, I back up a lot of my Blu-rays, DVDs, whatever, movies that I have, shit that I really enjoy. I put it on a NAS storage device, and I can watch it anywhere in my house or even beyond through the internet, right? And yeah, it's cool. It's awesome. I think a lot of people do it. But apparently YouTube did not enjoy this video, and they apparently said that this was considered harmful. So he received a second community guideline violation for showcasing a software known as blank on his Raspberry Pi 5. So of course, to read through it, what he had basically said was, I purposely avoid demonstrating any of the tools that are popularly used to circumvent purchasing movies, TVs, other media content. Or any tools that automatically slurp YouTube content. So content that would just download from YouTube and put it onto, like, your hard drive, without YouTube's permission, of course. In fact, in my own house, for multiple decades, he purchases physical media, which, congratulations, he puts it on a local NAS, yada, yada, yada. Now, thankfully, YouTube did actually go through and follow through with his appeal and, allowed him to absolutely showcase his video later on. But obviously for a content creator, and it gets even tougher when you're like a Linus Tech Tips, where like, if I get a guideline strike and I'm not allowed to upload for a week, like, hey, YouTube isn't my job. It's not something that's going to bankrupt me if I can't upload for a week or even longer. But for somebody like Linus, it's like, hey, I got to pay employees and God knows what else, and I have sponsor deadlines. Yeah, I'm pretty sure for a guy like him, losing a week time of uploading is absolutely going to cripple you a little bit financially. Let's be honest here. Now, he even talks about it. Last year in October, he had a strike for showing people how to use another software that was similar to software like Plex, for instance, where you could self-host your own movies, kind of like your own Netflix. And again, this is not harmful or dangerous software, unless, of course, it's harmful and dangerous to YouTube's bottom line. And that's what it seems like things are kind of headed to. Now, even when it comes to other software YouTube front ends that basically can deliver YouTube without you receiving any ads, even those services, and I would talk about what those services are, but I can't because of YouTube's restrictive TOS in this regard, even those guys received actual legal notices from YouTube because they were allegedly violating YouTube's API services. Now, of course, these services will say they don't understand we never agreed to their TOS. So what's going to happen? Things will continue normally until they can't. Assume it's just the start. Assume they'll ask GitHub to take down repos. Assume the team won't be able to work on blank. You know what you have to do. So again, for companies that are FOSS privacy focused, I feel like a lot of this stuff is starting to exist simply because of how annoying YouTube is making the website in the grand scheme, right? Like, it's gonna obviously cost people to be, divisive or seek alternative options when it comes to YouTube turning their website into, again, cable television. And again, do I think that it's entirely like, can you blame YouTube at all for doing this? No, you can't. Obviously, I said this last time, I really do think that what we're looking at is very blatant proof that YouTube is incredibly unsustainable, I think. I think the broader internet, especially when it comes to things like content delivery, like full media, is probably getting to a point, guys, where I think it literally is just too unsustainable, right? Like, it's probably costing a lot of these services, especially YouTube, tons of money every goddamn year in order to distribute all this video. And I'm pretty sure there's pressure from above YouTube, like at Alphabet, at Google, to make this more of a profitable website. I don't just think that a platform is going to ruin the user experience unless they see some serious things. And for YouTube, right, they're not connected to this like you and me. They're not looking through, the viewer comments. They just look at how people are bouncing, how people are interacting. If the viewership doesn't go down and they keep boiling the frog, then really in their minds, it doesn't really matter. This is all needless screaming. Now, I think what's really wild about the dangerous stuff too is like, when I think of software that I've talked about, right? On YouTube, there's a lot of content creators that are sponsored by browsers like Opera GX. Now, I don't use Opera GX. In fact, I made a whole video where I don't really trust it. Not, out of any malicious thing. I just don't like to use overbloated, web browsers. But when it came to software like Opera GX, one of the biggest advertising things about it is, bro, we can block YouTube ads. And tons of creators advertise this, web browser on YouTube. And again, I'm wondering if those YouTubers aren't putting themselves at risk because YouTube might arbitrarily consider Opera GX to be dangerous or harmful software some point down the road. I mean, I've talked about one of my favorite browsers, the browser I use on a day-to-day basis, Brave browser. I'm wondering if that's going to be considered harmful or dangerous software because Brave is even more aggressive when it comes to ad blocking solutions on the platform. And for me, I choose to disable the Brave ad blocker because personally, I'm wondering if YouTube is going to crack even further and they're going to start focusing on the actual accounts that are running ad blocker, right? Like, will YouTube give me a community guideline strike because I'm watching another person's content, except with an ad blocker enabled, right? So I'm just watching every single ad because at this point, I just refuse to even jump into the premium pipeline simply because I don't really find it to be overly beneficial to me. All right, I have other services when it comes to music, for instance, and even streaming services at this point. But yeah, it's a wild, wild world. And this is all also on the cusp of, again, YouTube letting really shitty advertisements through. I wouldn't really care about the ad block stuff if YouTube cared at all about making sure that ad blocks, the ads on their platform, a lot of them weren't actually dangerous. Now, not only just that, guys, there's also a moderation problem. One thing that I'm sure you've noticed when it comes to my videos or plenty of your favorite content creators' videos is the rampant amount of bot comments. Now, even with a lot of YouTube moderation tools allowed, there are still so many comments where, you'll see things like racial slurs, you'll see just all caps bullshit thrown up, like my uploads are better, blah, blah, blah. And of course, the moment you connect to any of these like actual profiles, they'll lead to Discord channels where you go into those Discord channels and there's possible malware sitting there. Really bad shit can exist there. And again, it's all out there. It just is a severe problem on the website. And it's worth talking about because honestly, I wouldn't care if YouTube put the same amount of effort they did into fighting ad blocks. They should put roughly that same amount of effort into fighting whatever this spam nonsense is. Now, I'm not going to say something stupid like YouTube is dying. This might be the death knell of YouTube. YouTube is basically cable television for the younger generation going forward. But just because a platform is established doesn't mean that something else can't come out of nowhere and start taking actual market share. You know, we used to think that, platforms like TikTok were never going to dominate or compete against YouTube. But here they are, and they dominate when it comes to short form media. When I looked at sites like Twitch TV, I didn't think that, other platforms could come and pose a serious threat. And there have been other platforms. Notably, YouTube themselves is a great alternative to Twitch. If you go look at live streaming analytics from Stream Charts, for instance, you can see that Twitch, while it's currently the largest share, YouTube's not that far behind. And even other platforms like Kick aren't also even far behind either. So why is YouTube doing really well when it comes to live streaming? There's content creators over here. The platform is matching up to Twitch and is actually providing features that Twitch is now considering adding. So I didn't know this, but Twitch was going to add a rewind feature, right? Which is something hilarious because it's literally 2014 technology. Like even the earliest advent of YouTube streaming, forget current YouTube streaming, the functionality of a DVR was something YouTube already had for a while. Like if you watch any of my streams on YouTube, especially when I'm live, you can see that you can scroll all the way back. You can go like hours back in my streams and just watch, like you can get extra context. The fact that, sites like Twitch are adding these features much down the road later shows you that, yes, even if you're popular at one point, if you fail to innovate or keep up with the trends or you keep up with the technology, it doesn't prevent other platforms like YouTube or Kick to come and give you not just better technology, but maybe better rates to your streamers and so on and so forth. I used to think Microsoft Windows was going to be the most dominant operating system forever. But hey, we're looking at a time and a place where other alternatives are finally starting to pop up. And I really feel that if YouTube wants to keep their big lead, they need to, A, stop making the site too annoying to use, and also they kind of need to embrace that if people are going to be watching content on their website, they should make the experience not just better. If you're going to put this much effort into fighting ads, you should be putting as much effort into fighting terrible ads that you still allow on the platform, and again, spam bots that lead people into some really dangerous corners of the internet. Now, again, it's okay to complain about YouTube, but I really feel like complaining for the sake of complaining isn't necessarily good, all right? And that's why one of the things that I want to do with my videos is also educate people into actual alternatives. So for instance, you may not like some of the alternative platforms that I show, but sites like Odyssey, for instance, are great platforms because what they can do is serve as alternative platforms for places where you want to upload videos without YouTube's restrictive TOS. So if I want to talk about, computer safety, or I want to educate people a little bit further, sites like Odyssey have a slightly less restrictive terms of service that we can still talk about for now, right? There are platforms like Rumble, for instance, that serve as direct competitors to YouTube. And maybe I don't like some of the content on here, but again, I think the competition really comes when a lot of creators who are very neutral or creators that just want to talk about general content all start flooding this platform together. And again, these are places where you can talk about anything that you want. Things like conspiracies, for instance, which are tightly controlled on YouTube. Sometimes maybe there's a sense to it. These platforms kind of are less restrictive. They allow just an alternative place. There are even places like PeerTube, which are great pieces of software because they allow an alternative, unfederated view of YouTube. So a lot of the content over here is actually people hosting their media on themselves. So for instance, places like Tilvids, Blender, a lot of these people produce their own content, they host it on their own servers, and using a platform like PeerTube, they allow you to basically watch people's videos on your mobile devices as if you were watching on YouTube, all without the big tech umbrella basically keeping you locked into their walled garden. Now again, if anything in this video pisses off YouTube or, triggers a community guideline strike, then I think it's a further example of me basically being right in this video, okay? Is that we kind of do need alternatives. We kind of need YouTube to at least moderate and be a little bit more forthcoming with what you can and cannot discuss on this website. Because the thing, honestly, as a content creator, one of the scariest things with this platform and any platform is wondering if the video you upload today won't be taken down in a week or 2 weeks because you chose to educate people on how to make their internet experiences better. If you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike if you dislike it. I am out. Hello, guys and gals. Me, Mudahar. I just came home from work. All right, I took a little time off to come and make this video. Now, you might be like, why does a guy with my channel have a full-time job? Why do I work? Why do I have a traditional, normal 9-to-5? Why? Now, YouTube is good income, but what we're about to talk about today is the reason why I never want YouTube as a job. Now, this is a channel known as Slope's Game Room, and he makes very, very good video game documentaries. He makes good videos on scams. Now, I don't really actively watch, Slope, but actually, is that a racial slur? I'm not entirely sure. But anyways, I don't entirely watch SGR. But for instance, one of the videos that I saw years ago, right? This is when I was making my Shenmue video, was Shenmue: A Complete History. Today, for the long and short of it, his channel is set for deletion. Now, this is his job, and if you're wondering why YouTube has never been my job, it's primarily because of this exact reason. Now, you might be wondering, is this a copyright troll? Did he decide to get hit by like every single game company under the sun? No, actually, it appears that his YouTube account isn't exactly the one committing the sin. His Google account is set for extinction. And as you all know in Chrono Trigger terms, if your Google account goes, your YouTube account is effectively squad wiped off the platform. This man's livelihood, this man's job is effectively ready to be nuked in what appears to be really a matter of days. So the reason I'm making this video is A, to also help raise awareness, but also to kind of talk about this because, again, this is the reason why I don't do YouTube as a job. It is a very risky endeavor. YouTube is a fun hobby, but the moment you turn this into a job, every single video needs to hit 1 million views, and for me, I'm fine if a video can tank. I'm fine if a video hits 1 out of 10. It's not going to financially ruin me or bury me or affect the livelihoods of my family. But it doesn't matter if your video tanks or it succeeds. If you lose the entire platform, if you lose, say, the office, the venue that you can present to your audience, that, ladies and gentlemen, is the really scary part. So what exactly happened with our buddy Slope? So I'm going to play a section of his video, and he's kind of going to talk about it a little bit. It actually has a lot to do with the video he made on a pretty notorious figure in the emulation space. So let me play this.
What it essentially is me looking into giving a full timeline series of events, looking into this Super Sega console that a Spanish individual known as Alejandro Martin was making, and it turned out to be a massive scam.
Now, hold on. I had to freeze frame. I thought this looked like Todd Rogers for a second, but no, this is apparently some Spanish guy who made a FPGA-like console, or was apparently making one that had a whole set of controversies. We're actually going to look a little bit more at this because what has happened over here is kind of the Streisand effect, and it actually isn't even entirely this guy's fault. So according to our buddy over here, SGR, he actually explains just what got his channel completely nuked.
To disprove me. There was chats between, I was in contact with him via WhatsApp. There would be screenshots of that. I put down a pre-order for the system. There was screenshots of the chargeback that I had to put through the bank to get back. And in those screenshots, it was very easy to work out my phone number. It was right there in the middle. My phone number, my email address, and even part of my bank details were in there. It sucked. It sucked. So anyway, the video came out. That was all reported on in the video, again, down there if you want to go watch it. Oh my God. The video was released, and he is still wanting to release this system. He's actually, a new version of this system, actually. He's even set up a WhatsApp, public WhatsApp group, and he promotes this in his live streams. And obviously, because this is the sort of content I like to cover, I wanted to get in that WhatsApp group. But I didn't want to go in there with my new phone number because obviously this guy has just doxed me, right? So what I ended up doing, completely laying all my cards on the table here, the jig is up, went down to the shops, got myself a pay-as-you-go SIM card, put it into an old phone, and joined the group.
So what a smart guy. He goes out to the store, gets a new SIM card, because he knows his ass is going to get doxxed again if he uses his regular phone number, or any details that actually hard lock belong to him. So probably should have done that in the beginning, but that's not even the worst part. So when he gets into this entire group, he actually copies off all of the actual information, and then he puts it into a Google Drive. And what happens after this is actually the catalyst to SGR's channel completely, like, you know, getting into threat. So here it is.
Thousands upon thousands upon thousands of messages, GIFs, videos, stickers, whatever, in this group. So just like the last one, I needed a Spanish translator to help me with, you know, collecting this evidence. I exported the entire chat. It's on my Google Drive, put it on my Google Drive, and sent it over to my Spanish translator to have a look, see if there was anything worth talking about. So anyway, that was at 9:43, that exported chat, last Wednesday on June the 4th. I then went out for the day, spent some time with one of my friends, just come out of hospital after surgery, just had some lunch with him. Anyway, a few hours later, came home, and on the way home, my Google Music stopped working. I'm like, what's going on here? It didn't make much sense, right? Then I tried to get into my Gmail, my YouTube Creator Center, all of these other, I couldn't get into my Drive. And I'm like, what's going on? I couldn't work out what was going on. I got back, and at first I thought I must be hacked, because when I tried to log in, it said you've violated YouTube's policies or something to that effect. Your account is set for deletion.
Now that, ladies and gentlemen, if YouTube is your job, like I said in the beginning, that is the fucking biggest nightmare to hear, okay? It's like, hey buddy, your entire livelihood is basically set to be deleted. So you better figure out what to do about that gap in your resume, because you better start looking for a fucking job, buddy-o. Now, again, I really do empathize a lot with somebody like this. Like, this is his job. He's done a pretty good, you know, thing on YouTube. And even though he's not been like the YouTuber that ever really like broke through into like the ultra mainstream, he still had a really healthy channel, enough for him to feed himself and his family and produce good content for the entire world to just sit down and sort of enjoy. So yeah, it is actually pretty sad to see the case. And one of the reasons speculated after he had exported all this information from this, you know, WhatsApp group, because he wanted to make like a part 2 to his like documentary. It's understandable. I wanted to do the same for previous investigations, and I'm sure anybody who's ever investigated anything goofy on the internet has done the same. Except what appears to be is when he dropped all that information into his Google Drive, something in it tripped something over at YouTube, and he kind of explains it a little bit over here.
I think I made a big mistake of accidentally putting an incorrect email in for them to contact me back. I think I put my wife's email in, but put it as a .co.uk instead of a .com, essentially a non-existent email. I worked that out later on that night. Oh my God, I think, you know, later on, I'm sitting there thinking, what could I have possibly uploaded or done that would have triggered this? And I just can't work it out. And then I'm like, hang on, what was in that WhatsApp group folder that I uploaded? And well, here we are. Not going to go into too much detail, but I believe it's hate speech related stuff, certain symbols and things that have been picked up by some kind of AI thing and then just locked everything down, absolutely everything down. And after looking up online, from my understanding, I think you have 2 chances to appeal, and I've ruined the first one. And here we.
So basically, he's got 1 chance left because he put in a false email, or not a false email, but an invalid email in the first appeal, which obviously wouldn't fly off too well. Now, this is pretty important because, you know, there's been a lot of speculation that I was reading, like, man, did he possibly upload something illegal, like CSAM, for instance, onto a drive? Which, again, I'm not somebody that, like, you know, knows anything. Nobody knows exactly. He's also speculating himself. But if that was the case, and again, I'm only mentioning this because it's very serious, if YouTube or really any cloud service provider, anybody knew this, anybody like tripped that flag on their system, the account would have been gone. We wouldn't even be able to watch the video on his channel. They would have terminated the account, from my understanding, right there and then a whole case would have been started with like relevant authorities, and he would have known this, like pretty much from what I understand, like as that investigation was starting to begin, or he would have been notified by the police. Like this would be a very serious trip of like Google's, you know, what do they call it? YouTube CSAI match, where like, again, if something illegal gets tripped in a Google Drive, if that was the case, it would have completely nuked his channel out of the orbit. So again, his speculation is something hate speech related showed up. So from my understanding, there might have been some, I would imagine, like a hate symbol, like maybe something, I don't know, the swastikas or whatever the fuck, right? Like something could have shown up. Maybe a YouTube, like, or not YouTube, but like a Google Drive AI moderation tool probably opened up one of the screenshots. Again, if this is true, like scanned through, like did all like the complete like mapping of like words, and probably found something that tripped its flag, and then immediately put his channel in for deletion. Now, this is a little alarming to me because the other reason I want to make this video is like I use Google Drive myself. Now, I'm not posting, you know, anti-Semitic, hateful, like, you know, shit in there, like whatever. But, you know, if YouTube moderation is just flipping through people's files, not YouTube, but Google Drive moderation, and they're looking for things that trip a flag, right? There's a lot of things that can trip an AI. You know, just because you have something that is quote unquote hateful inside that Google Drive, right? Like, first off, who determines exactly what is hate speech? But who can an AI really determine the context of what that hate speech was? He clearly does not seem like somebody that is, you know, part of some, you know, hate speech organization. He's not part of some like neo-Nazi group, from my understanding. It doesn't seem that way. Now, one thing I wanted to see in Google Drive's terms of services over here was this TOS that applies to Drive, Doc, Sheets, Slides, blah, blah, blah. If you go all the way down in hate speech, they do say do not engage in hate speech. Hate speech is content that promotes or condones violence against or has the primary purpose of inciting hatred against a individual or group on the basis of their race, ethnic origin, religion, disability, age, nationality, veteran status, orientation, gender, gender identity, and anything else. So similar stuff that you would see on something like YouTube. Now, this leads me to believe that I don't think YouTube is just automatic, or it's not YouTube, sorry, Google Drive is not automatically like AI like scanning every single thing. Maybe there was a report done. Remember, this guy also just, apparently according to him, got doxxed. So I wouldn't doubt that there's some level of harassment headed towards this guy. Now, the other thing that also comes out is one of the reasons I mentioned CSAM earlier, and this is from like Koffel Law, like an actual law firm wrote this, where in the state of California, a father took, naked pictures of his, kid for a doctor, by the way. Okay, so this was completely valid. This was a medical photo that he had actually sent to the doctor, and an automated tool used by Google flagged the account and triggered an actual 10-month criminal investigation, which is one of the reasons why I said it can't be this, because this would trigger, he would know very well that, he has tripped this specific flag. But this just shows you an issue with things like AI moderation, right? Like, the AIs don't know the context. They just look at the actual image material and they think, yeah, this seems very problematic, right? Why would you have this? And because of that, somebody actually ended up being investigated for, in this instance, innocent photos that were taken for medical reasons, obviously for an issue regarding their actual toddler, right? Which, again, it doesn't mean that, these sites are actively breaking your privacy, but there is scanning going on. And, if we're to believe SGR, the scanning was probably tripped off of something in in the materials he backed up from that WhatsApp group, if his words are true. And that's what has caused his account to basically be at the end of its rope, unless he, gets a successful appeal. When I investigate things like cryptocurrencies, I don't even download all the Telegram stuff, because if I download entire group chats and channels, there's a pretty good chance that something illegal might have been posted. And just me downloading something, it's not me wanting to have illegal stuff on my system. It's just literally because I cloned an entire channel or server, I could have an illegal file or an illegal photo, which is the reason I don't do it, right? Just because that would also be you guilty for being in possession of something illegal or whatever. So basically, something got tripped, and the moderation basically put that one Google Drive account, that whole Google account, into actual jeopardy, and by extension, obviously his YouTube channel as well. So again, he's not making this video to get money out of it. In fact, if you go later on into the video, he says that the most important thing out of this actually isn't even really his job, which is his YouTube channel. It's the fact that he also has photos of his wedding, photos of his children, photos of actual key landmark events and times in his in his personal life, and he doesn't want to lose any of that, which I totally fucking understand. And if that's the catalyst driving you, brother, I wish you nothing but the best. Now, obviously, the thing with this is when looking into like SGR and how he was trying to reach out, a lot of YouTubers came in, and I'm jumping into this as well too. And obviously there have been actual emails, I guess, sent out to like Google employees and whatnot, but there's really not been a response. And I think the really shocking part about this too is like, this is clearly, at least what appears to be like just a fucking error. So why is it that like, I get that Google is a large organization, right? But when you have YouTube channels that are bringing in, 5 to 6 figures a goddamn year, like full job level income, right? Maybe negligible for YouTube, but it becomes a real enterprise out here. Why is it that YouTube doesn't have some level of human contact between like, a channel that's at 191,000 subscribers? So this guy isn't brand new to YouTube, right? This is not like some random fucking no-name 10 sub channel that just got made yesterday. This is a guy that has over 9 years of actual history. This guy has made content throughout his time on YouTube. This guy has constantly provided YouTube with like his information and whatnot. Why is it that for this person right here, when the absolute like endpoint is around him, like when he's about to lose everything, YouTube is just kind of a non-existent entity? This guy needs help, all right? It shouldn't require you to go to like fucking Twitter, to go to X, and like scream into the heavens for the simplest attention from YouTube, right? It should literally just be, you get in touch with somebody over at Google, right? And you just explain to them, listen, this is literally like, I'm not some person spreading hate speech. I had it tripped the moderation filter. You could have explained this very well. It does not need to be a situation where we have to be making videos and screaming to the void for all of this. He was a man that was doing investigative journalism, and he fucking lost his main platform in the pursuit of that journalism, which I think is a very important context that if somebody at YouTube was just able to like see, this wouldn't be the issue that it is right now. Now, to go to the guy that he was covering, this is the channel Super Sega, and from my understanding, it's not even really him who's done any of this. But again, this is the guy, this is just him like uploading videos of him like cooking around. It actually is goddamn disgusting. But to go into it, right, like one of his channels over here, if you go down, you can literally find that he has the WhatsApp group in the actual description here. So if you go over here, you can actually access this WhatsApp group. And I would not access this if, I were you, just because I don't know what kind of information you're giving up. I don't really use any of this. Like, this is actually the first time I've seen somebody do this instead of, like, normally this would be Telegram, but it is WhatsApp. But let's say that, our buddy SGR gets hit by Google's moderation. This dude's put it into the link in the YouTube description. How is this not hit? It makes no sense. People can just click here, go into the actual WhatsApp group, and see the stuff that apparently isn't okay, or at least, if the story is true, isn't okay with like Google's terms of services, right? I mean, this is one of the reasons why people have like link trees here, usually so that they don't put their actual OnlyFans, because I understand that would be against YouTube terms of service. So they just use like a separate service as like a in-between, so you don't violate TOS on these platforms. But this is just like happening completely out in the open. Now, for anybody that doesn't know, this like fucking dude is just a traditional, like from what I understand, like an actual scammer based on what I've seen. So here he is in like a Lamborghini, or I believe this is a Lamborghini, talking about his Super Sega device. And again, this is the Super Sega console, which for anybody that has no idea what the Super Sega console is, this is apparently an FPGA console this person was building. And you can just plug in all of your Sega games and just play them on your big television screen, right? So FPGA, for anybody that doesn't know what it is a field programmable gate array system where, again, you can, it's emulation, but you can basically make it so that like your Sega, your actual like system that you're trying to emulate matches as close as it can, like literally at a circuit level to the original system. So yeah, this guy was making, or apparently like building this system where it was supposed to be like the Sega console. Our buddy SGR made a video exposing this to be the obvious bullshit nonsense scam that it is. And it wasn't just him that did it. There was also like entire write-ups that you can go to. This is actually one of those points where the moment you actually get to look into like this whole situation, it's like one of the most niche, like, scam dramas that I wanted to kind of cover because, again, it's in the emulation wheelhouse. So for instance, one write-up from like Big Elk in 2025, the Super Sega Crazy History, basically was where they talked about the same console. And like 10 months ago, there would just be like this footage of people playing Crazy Taxi, or like the actual company or like the group behind it showcasing this system. Now, Alejandro Martin started uploading more and more videos showing off that FPGA console, each one being more unprofessional, strange, creepy, and suspicious. A few times, he even uploaded videos to his official Super Sega channel that had nothing to do with Super Sega. So yeah, this wasn't like, you know, an official like crazy product. This wasn't even like a Sega product. It was some Spanish grifter finding a way to get money out of people that just had nostalgia. So for instance, one of the claims here was in September, Alejandro opened up pre-orders with a very odd structure. He announced that he would take deposits of €3. So currently just under $3. So basically, from what I'm gathering here, from what I'm putting down, Alejandro would just take a few bucks from like, you know, randoms on the internet, and that would put you on a short list for the privilege of paying the rest of the hundreds of euros to get a Super Sega after enough deposits were made. Hey man, I'm going to put you on a pre-order list for the pre-order list for this janky system that I'm making. So again, to go into this, right, unless enough deposits were made, showing enough interest to go into production, everyone would have had their €3 refunded. If at least 500 deposits were made, then Alejandro would let you know that he'd go ahead with accepting the rest of the cost directly from your bank account. He even felt honest enough to warn buyers that he would take the remainder of the cost at any time. Yeah, that's pretty dog shit. So you might be like, well, did people actually get their console? No, apparently, according to reporting, if you put like your $3 down, apparently like the next day, it wasn't a holding payment. The bank confirmed a full amount was even taken from somebody's credit card, one of the users, and that was SGR. And that amount was $420. So apparently it's the whole system plus shipping. Now, if you're paying €420 for a goddamn FPGA Sega, just emulate the fucking thing on your PC. Emulator is already good enough. You don't need to give money to like off-brand Sega ambassador here for a fucking console. What is wrong with you? If I was born yesterday, I could tell you that this dude right here is probably ready to scam the ever-loving shit out of you, okay? He doesn't seem like a trustworthy man to me. He seems like a guy that found enough, like, people on, like, WhatsApp who had nostalgia and was like, yeah, just give me a few bucks. I'll make you that console that you really want. So eventually, in order to make this scam work, it seems like that our buddy here decided to actually get rid of that, like, I guess design that they had and went with the Mr. FPGA. So something you can build yourself right now, something that you can do yourself, something you can put together way cheaper than this shit right here, the 400 plus euros that were being siphoned out of people's bank accounts. But yeah, that was effectively the whole like story right over here. And it's in fact, if YouTube does take down SGR's channel, I do at least recommend you guys to at least watch his 2-hour-long documentary because he produces a pretty good timeline on this nonsense right here. But yeah, this is just a story of YouTube and Google's moderation, seemingly going out of their way to shut down a pretty innocent channel over here. Because look, SGR does not seem like the kind of guy that, is doing anything illegal. And, normally I don't even think I'm the best judge of character, to be honest with you. I mean, I'm really not, but he doesn't seem like the guy that has anything wrong going on, from my understanding. So, he seems like a guy that earnestly downloaded what appears to be a scumbag's WhatsApp group, somebody who is totally okay with kind of like just stepping into the emulation game space and seemingly just, siphoning dollars or euros out of people's bank accounts for a project that honestly probably could be replicated at a far cheaper scale. But he downloads this guy's WhatsApp group, and the WhatsApp group probably is filled with some pretty heinous material. And I'm not going to jump into the WhatsApp group to necessarily confirm it myself, but given me covering this kind of stuff, I'm not going to be shocked if that turns out to be the case. SGR takes that information, puts it into Google Drive trips something, and here we are. Basically, the person who is advertising this group on his channel pretty openly, and not only advertising it, but also just, you know, seemingly scamming the audience. Seemingly, of course, allegedly scamming the audience, just kind of gets away with it. And the guy who's exposing it is the one that ultimately may lose his livelihood. It's a topsy-turvy world we live in. And honestly, I'm hoping YouTube steps in. You know, I'm going to try reaching to my connections. It's interesting too, like if you're a YouTuber, no matter how big you are, it always feels like your connections change every like 6 months. So I'm going to see who I can reach. I'm going to hopefully get in touch with somebody. And at least I'm going to try on my end. And hopefully I do urge like other creators to kind of help this guy out because, you know, at the end of the day, when you're a YouTuber, you're kind of sharing the space with everyone. And regardless of all our differences, it's always better we come together to help each other out as opposed to stay in our little bubbles, especially in crises like this. That said, if you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike it if you dislike it. I am out. Hello, guys and gals, me, Mudahar. I know there's going to be that one guy in the comments, blue polo analysis. Well, it's pretty true. You know when I got the Best Buy blue on? I'm about to crap all over Microsoft like they're the nicest street in existence. Ladies and gentlemen, as you all know, Windows 10 is dying this year. I'm not shy about making videos on this. I've actually talked about this, and I basically said that, you know, Windows 10, all the updates and the security stuff you're getting, well, that's basically going to stop. Okay, Microsoft wants you to jump all the way to Windows 11. Now you might be like, but Muda, what if I can't upgrade my computer because it says it doesn't support it? Well, tough titty. Or you can use things like Rufus and basically like cut out the parts of Windows 11 like requirements that are hampering you. But that's not to say that kind of stuff is going to last forever, okay? Let's just be completely real. Now, I think it's kind of nonsense. I really think, like, you know, Windows 12 isn't even here. At least support this. And, you know what? Microsoft kind of had to admit that, you know, they're losing. Microsoft has to admit that they're actually losing. And, you know, they straight up just said, yeah, we're gonna at least give you guys some actual updates for that 10. So, for instance, they released, you know, this little follow-up just a couple days ago, and I wanted to, like, kind of cover it. So here's what happens when Windows 10 support dies. Microsoft no longer provides any security or feature updates or technical support for any of those Windows 10 computers. So while they're gonna continue to function, they're not gonna receive those regular security updates. So if you're a Windows 10 person and you're like, I just don't want to go to 11, okay? Which, again, I don't really understand why not. If you can't upgrade, like, I upgraded to Windows 11 as soon as it was, like, officially available inside my VM and on that computer back there. And generally speaking, like, it's an okay experience. Like, it's good for Windows, right? But, yeah, if you want to protect yourself from all the nasty viruses that exist all over, you're gonna probably want to upgrade, okay? Now, of course, any company or organization that operates Windows 10 may find it challenging to maintain regulatory compliance with unsupported software, which actually is a pretty important part towards the latter half of this video, but I want to kind of just like run through this. So applications running on Win 10 may not be supported. Those 365 apps, they'll continue to receive any of those security updates until October 10, 2028. Which, again, shows you that, obviously, for a lot of people that aren't upgrading and have been subscribers, Microsoft's a little worried, right? Like, if all of a sudden, you know, those subscription services aren't able to use their product, which I suspect a lot of them are, they're going to start losing. So this is why they're, like, giving those people feature updates and security updates until, of course, 2028. And when that time comes, they're hoping that hopefully these people have switched over to 11 or maybe even Windows 12 by that point, dude. You never know. So, of course, Microsoft will continue to provide security intelligence updates for Windows Defender Antivirus on Windows 10 through October 2028. Now, you might be like, doesn't that conflict with point 1? And no, it doesn't, because in point 1, they say, like, regular security updates, yada, yada, yada. But generally speaking, anytime you install Windows, you have Windows Defender, and they're going to give you all of those updates till 2028, because I very much doubt that Microsoft wants to be in a situation where a whole bunch of YouTubers, news people, like, are all going to laugh at them when they find out, holy shit, guys, you're on Windows 10. Congratulations, you're not going to get butt-fucked at end of life, okay? There's a reason why you can't connect things like Windows XP to the internet without any form of condoms on your routers or your system, because just by connecting Windows XP, or even older versions of Windows right now. I made a video on it. Plenty of other YouTubers have made videos on it. Eric Parker made a good video on it. He kind of broke the news. Yeah, tons of like crazy botnets and hackers just look for Windows systems at EOL and infect the shit out of them and put them into botnets and use them for nefarious purposes, which is something that could happen to even Windows 10 or Windows 11, like 10, 15 years later, when it's EOL, you know, some person with a really old computer decides to connect it on the internet and realizes, oh shit, we're getting taken advantage of. Now, one of the reasons why, I guess, sort of companies kind of like got into how Microsoft lost a little bit was also some people are saying that Windows straight up said that they're powering over 1 billion monthly active devices. And you might be like, why does that statement really mean anything, Muda? Well, according to some people who basically cover Windows for a living, quietly apparently implied that a lot of people are actually abandoning Windows, okay? So they actually used to say that Windows was running on 1.4 billion devices. Now, the thing is, for a lot of these companies, and I'll just straight up say it, that number is super important to them, okay? It's like the holy grail, all right? That is like the biggest flex to all of their competition. As long as any company can say, we support so-and-so device, we have so-and-so many users, it's the ultimate dick-swinging party to any of these companies. So I doubt that Microsoft just like conveniently rounded down. It's like talking about your dick size, okay? You don't round down. If anything, you round up if you can. So it's a quiet wonder of like, is Microsoft actually losing? But did they lose like 400 million people? I'm gonna probably wager, no. I don't think 400 million people have just stopped using Windows out of nowhere. The thing about Windows is it's entrenched. And one of the reasons why this is important to me is that obviously Windows is not top dog anymore. I would say the last good version of Windows, in my opinion, was probably Windows 7. Okay, anything after that it has felt like a fart in the wind. You know, Windows 8 fucking sucked. Windows 10 was like, all right, you're giving me Windows 8 without all the dog shit attached to it. And then Windows 11 is just kind of, you like AI? We like AI. We hope you like AI. Let's just shove as much AI shit as we can into this system. And I really feel like a lot of these big tech companies, like AI is just a sort of like weird business that they're all just running after, okay? And I'm not somebody that's a Luddite. I think AI can be cool. There's a lot of stuff that I was reading where like, you know, people were making these AIs, like these students that were like diagnosing people with like, I think it was malaria, faster than like doctors could, inadvertently saving a lot of lives. In a lot of cases, I think in the medical field, AI is pretty cool. But then again, I remember that AI is also used to, you know, target civilians in military applications. I also really understand that AI is used to steal from the artist and then replace them without their consent, just because that's how a lot of AI models work, right? You know, a lot of these big companies like Anthropic, like Meta, like Microsoft, you know, a lot of them allegedly will just download pirated content, you know, stuff that me and you would get a fucking nasty letter in the mail for, maybe even civil like litigation. But these companies can basically use the pirated media as fair use training material for AIs. And then when they get pinned for the piracy, they're really just paying a fine they knew they had to pay anyways. Remember, piracy really isn't a crime, I guess, as long as you're rich enough, okay? Like, as long as you can pay the fucking civil penalty, what does it even matter? You know what I mean? Who gives a shit? But anyways, I'm getting a little bit too ahead of myself. The thing with Microsoft kind of admitting this failure right now is actually good, because it really shows that they're not the top dog, okay? They used to be back when XP, Vista, 7, all the way up to 10, people used Windows because that's really all that could have been used. Microsoft was at an advantage. If you were a PC gamer, if you were anybody that wasn't using a Mac, Windows was the only viable alternative. Linux existed since the beginning, since the inception, but it's never really been a mature option up until very recently, where the average user can convert to it and not feel the level of friction they once did, right? That's the important part about this, right? That's the important part about this technological like gap that we're having here. Now that gap is really tiny. Now if you want to use Windows or you want to use Linux, aside from a few professionals with certain specific applications, like people that are locked into Adobe, or, you know, God, you have to use Microsoft Office, even though I really feel like Microsoft Office is only pushed because big companies pay for subscriptions and they just force that onto the user. I have never fucked with Office since high school, since my first job, ever since, I would say after 2010, 2011. We've just been Google Doc users here, okay? And that's just pretty much the family we're locked into. So yeah, it's one of those things where obviously the competition is here, the choice is here. You know, it is what it is. Now, one of the things that I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about this stuff with Microsoft is, why has Windows basically been the dominant operating system? You know, for a while, if you went to the store, you went to Best Buy, right? Like, your only other option was picking up a MacBook, which, you know, Apple's been around forever. And, you know, I was somebody that made a Porsche Mac. If you remember that video from like 3 years ago, I built a Mac that was better than, I would say, most of the Macs you could buy for a fraction of the price. And I used that through a virtual machine Hackintosh method. Now, ever since Apple switched their processors to M processors, their own stuff that was really good, everybody in the industry is trying to slowly copy them. In fact, they're so good that even me, a dedicated Apple hater, actually ended up buying one of these things because they're just really good. And, you know, realistically, if you didn't want to get an Apple, your only other option was picking up a fucking Chromebook. Now, the thing is, Chromebooks aren't even all that bad either. You know, if you wanted to go to Best Buy and shit, you can pick up a Chromebook for $280. You could even install like Linux. You could even install Proton and play some Steam games on it. Not saying the experience on this thing will particularly be good, but, you know, it's an option that's available. And, you know, to no disrespect to the Chromebook people, I'm pretty sure if you put a Chromebook in front of some average person and all they did was want to browse the internet, you know, watch some videos, they probably wouldn't give a fuck if it runs on Mac, if it runs on Windows, if it runs on Linux. As long as it runs their browser, it's all that matters, buddy. That's all they give a shit about. Now, looking into Microsoft's past, and this is where I kind of wanted to like make this video to like sort of showcase that Microsoft has never been like a competitive group, right? Microsoft has really gained a lot of advantage back during the days of MS-DOS, the original Windows, where they were the first ones with a very general usable operating system. But they weren't the ones with the best operating system. What Microsoft has always really done is abuse their position to basically remain dominant. Now, in capitalism, you might be like, doesn't the best product win, right? Like, doesn't the market decide anything? And you would hope for that, but that's not how it works. What Microsoft did before 1995 was they went to the OEM. So they went to the stores, right? Like the people that would sell, you know, Windows systems. Now, you probably heard the concept of default. I've talked about it. There's been an entire lawsuit recently involving Apple and Google, where Google was paying like Apple billions of dollars to be the default search engine on their phone. Now, I showed you in a video a couple days ago with PewDiePie, you know, self-hosting, that you could run something called Seer X and G locally on your system and get a better Google experience without the ads and the tracking. Now, of course, what'll happen right here is Microsoft was basically the first progenitor of that. So before 1995, the OEMs, so your companies that would build your laptop, so HP, Acer, you know, Asus, a lot of these companies you went to buy your pre-builds. Microsoft would basically charge them a license fee for every computer that they would sell, regardless if those systems even had Windows installed on it or not. And what that meant was, if you were paying money to Microsoft anyways as a fee, why the fuck would you install Linux for free? Or, you know, other competitors at the time would be like, what, OS/2? Why would you do it? You would have to pay Microsoft anyways. And it wasn't until the United States government and Microsoft went to a court case in 1994 that that was considered anti-competitive, because you were actually stifling the choice from the user. You didn't even give your competition a chance when you could use your money to butt-fuck your way to the top. Now, of course, after all this, OEMs even were pressured by Microsoft to just straight up install Windows, and sometimes exclusively in these systems too, right? And what would happen is, like, let's say you were an OEM and you were like, what if we want to give the choice, Microsoft? What if we want to install like Ubuntu or something? Microsoft would be like, no, you have one choice. You can either have us, the dominant platform, or we can just walk away, right? They wouldn't even allow you to dual boot systems, right? So they wouldn't even sell you a two operating system option. You know, they wouldn't even give the user the chance to even learn that competition existed, right? Imagine if you fired up your system and you saw Windows or Linux or a flavor of it. You could have a choice between which one you wanted to use. You might actually give Linux a try back then, and you might be like, maybe I can make this work. It's better. It just works for me. But you never had the chance. Now, one of the really fucked things that I saw in this situation was, like, in my research, was that back in the day, I don't even know this, but during the Windows 8 era, some of the OEM agreements had it where, like, because of Secure Boot, which was a part of the UEFI motherboard, literally Microsoft had mandated that to be enabled by default, which basically meant that in certain cases, if you were Linux or another operating system that wasn't Secure Boot capable, you weren't even running. It wasn't straightforward to even install your competition. So after 1994, Microsoft still decided to actually stifle the competition. And while it was, outlawed, or, it was regulated that they couldn't do that per processor licensing, what happened later was that they had minimum commitment contracts. So let's say that you were a OEM, and Microsoft would just be like, all right, you have to purchase a certain amount of Windows licenses. And it wasn't like, hey, we're making, 400 computers, we're selling 400 computers, can we only have 4? No, you have to buy like 800 licenses or some insane amount, so that you were just basically pushing this license on as many systems that you were selling as possible. Again, if you were a competitor like Linux or any competitor, you never had a chance, especially at the store where most of the normies would go and buy their systems. Of course, even beyond all of it, you would end up having like this all or nothing model where Microsoft would basically say, for your entire lineup of computers, you have to sell Windows. Not just a specific set, all of your systems. Look, the point is, Microsoft never succeeded anywhere because they generally made the best product. They won because they were able to use their capital and their connections to basically force themselves into your computer, right? They were able to force the system to only provide you this option, right? Because that's just the reality. This was never a situation where the best product always won. Microsoft has always used its power and leverage in history to force itself onto the user base. Except now, things are a little bit different. I feel like there's a wave of people that are building their own systems, and even if you go to big vendors like Lenovo who sell ThinkPads, which are probably after MacBooks, some of the most common laptops that I see out in the world, have options for you to buy Linux systems. And we looked at their pricing models, right? Like when you remove Windows, you end up having an extra $200 to $300 that you could then put towards better hardware. So you can get a better laptop as opposed to paying $200 to $300 for a Windows license that if you really wanted Windows, you could just download it from their storefront and just deal with a watermark, or just go on GitHub and find a script or something that could get rid of that for you. But I'm going to leave that for a different video. And that would just be how things work. I think what I've kind of learned about this too is like in the last year or two, right? Like talking about Linux has kind of been like, just me being like a prepper, just screaming into the heavens about this competition that exists. But, ever since like SteamOS has become a thing, the Steam Deck has been one of the best pieces of hardware you can buy in gaming, right? Like to me, it's either, you pick up this or you get like a Nintendo Switch, and there are other options, but generally speaking, even if you don't want the deck, you can buy any of these other handheld devices and install SteamOS and seemingly get a better experience. And just for Linux users, there's so many more advancements that have happened in just like the last few weeks alone that have made it a viable alternative for gamers. And I'm sure with the amount of effort that's happened into gaming, there's going to be enough effort put into getting other software and other things to run, eventually making that gap between Windows and Linux completely completely invisible at that point. And the thing with like Linux is like, obviously it's an open source platform, and you don't have to deal with like end of life nonsense. As long as you have capable hardware and Linux supports a broad set of hardware, you should basically be fine. And the thing about it is, it's like obviously something that is open source and something that is freeing should be endorsed by, I think, a majority of people. Microsoft Windows is fine, and it used to be the only choice we had, but the world runs on open source. Even without Linux, Microsoft's own money-making services wouldn't be existing, okay? And that's the thing. The world being run by open source technologies is not a new concept. You're watching this video on YouTube, guaranteed this is running on a Linux instance on a server powered entirely by Linux. And the thing is, it used to be the only option for servers and still is, but for the desktop user, for you and I, You know, we finally have an option to have something that decouples us from Microsoft's predatory licensing, Microsoft's operating system, and for the first time, because they actually have had competition, they've had to publicly state, yeah, we're gonna have to readjust the way we do Windows. We're gonna have to like de-bloat Windows. I mean, for fuck's sake, when it comes to gaming, they finally admitted, because of SteamOS, because of the advancements in Linux, that they're not top dog. In fact, if anything, Microsoft is actually the worst option for certain games. And because of that, they had to actually deal with the competition and attempt at this point to create a better product. Now, will they do that? I don't know. I'm excited to see what they do. But yeah, going forward, you finally have an option. And it's just, it's actually vindicating as a Linux user to see like Microsoft squirm and actually admit losses. And not only admit losses, but also admit that people aren't just switching over to 11. You know, there's a lot of people that are actually looking at this like upgrade as the final like fork in the road for them to actually switch over to the Penguin or even switch over to Apple, right? Like there's a lot of people that would be willing to switch just there. Microsoft has genuinely ruined their system over the course of several years. And maybe a lot of that has had to do with like them chasing AI or them chasing like a whole bunch of different things. But, you know, they've ignored the actual core Windows experience. And it's because of that that, you know, because your competition has finally caught up, because you've got big companies like Valve, Apple, really any company that's pushing, you know, Linux further than it used to be, times be a change. And I wanted to talk about it because I feel like the more you guys learn about the history of Microsoft, the more you realize why it's here. You know that it's not a merit-based win. It's just Microsoft abusing the legal like system and abusing the relationship with OEMs that has got them where they're at. It's not because they're good. It's because they just had more money to play with. Ladies and gentlemen, this is me, Mudahar, and if you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Just like if you dislike it, I am out. Hello, guys and gals, me, Mudahar. It's late night, and you know what? I have to make this video because I'm seeing Microsoft sweat some real bullets. Now, I've talked a lot about Microsoft, I've talked a lot about Valve, talked a lot about Steam Decks, talked a lot about gaming, actually. But this is a passionate topic for me because, honestly, I love competition. I want to start this video off by saying I don't want Windows to fail, okay? I don't like using it, I really don't like promoting it, but I always love when there's competition, okay? When there's more than one big guy in the pond, it's just better for everyone, okay? When both of these players are innovating, we win. So anyways, you know, I made a video a couple days ago, and it was me basically detailing that, you know, I really think Valve's SteamOS is actually a dog walking Windows a little bit. So I recently installed SteamOS onto that Asus ROG Ally. I then later installed Bazzite, which is basically, you know, the same thing except a more general distro of Linux. And, you know, like me and other channels like Dave2D, we noticed that our devices, all right, just got better battery life. The frames were better on certain games. Okay, all because we just dropped an operating system. You know, we basically gave our devices a digital version of Ozempic, and all of a sudden, these little tiny handheld gaming devices had an extra hour, 2 hours sometimes of battery life. The frames were better on certain games, of course, not every game. And it all really came down to the fact that when we got rid of Windows 11, all right, suddenly things started to look a little clearer. Now, I think it's because of this that, honestly, I think Microsoft probably looked at this and decided to reportedly cancel that Xbox handheld. Now, I think handheld consoles are great, okay? To be honest with you, if it wasn't for the Switch, if it wasn't for the Steam Deck, I don't think I would have played through, like, all of the JRPGs that I've gotten, okay? Now, I've played through games on my PlayStation, the Xbox, the goddamn PC even. But generally speaking, if I can get something in my hand, I don't care if it looks like 720p dog shit. I don't even care if it's 30 frames per second. Sometimes it's just cozy to play a game in the hand, pause it whenever I want, and come back to it whenever I want. So I don't really care who's doing that. Whoever provides that experience the best is all for me. Remember, I'm the same guy that before the Steam Deck, before the Switch, my most used system, I'm not joking, was the PSP. Bro, I used to game on this like a champ back in the day when I used to play, you know, actually, is it dead or is it... Wait, how did it die? Did I just leave it on? That's crazy. Anyways, this was one of my favorite devices just because back in the day when I had the bigger, chunkier PSP, and this is before even the Vita, this is how I used to actually watch YouTube videos. Like I had a hacked handheld system. I used to watch channels like the Nostalgia Critic, AVGN, a lot of it under the covers, when I was in bed. Just watching it on the YouTube like homebrew app, okay? Half the screen would be black and white and the other half would be colored, but I didn't care, okay? It was a cozy experience. But a lot of my favorite games on the PSP, games like Grand Theft Auto, Liberty City Story, Vice City Stories, heck, the Persona 3 Portable, that's all of these games, amazing titles. Handheld gaming pretty much was the only way I played games for a while, and I feel like I've kind of went back to that with things like the Steam Deck, with things like the Nintendo Switch. And honestly, I may not be a Windows fan, but if the Xbox handheld gave me better performance and battery life, even if it was with Windows 11, I probably would pick this up and actually unironically play games on this and probably buy from the Xbox store. It's just that enticing. So anyways, it turns out that apparently that Xbox handheld, and this apparently was like a leak of it, it was from like Asus, so the same guys that made the Rogue, and that apparently ended up actually getting canceled. Now, of course, this doesn't mean that this device was ever even actually like seriously announced or maybe even seriously considered at Microsoft. Maybe it was just something they threw at a dartboard, so I don't want to like really get into the weeds of, supporting a device that may or may not have really even legitimately existed. But there's no shock in my mind that obviously with how handheld gaming is becoming popular because of things like the Switch, because of things like the Steam Deck, that Microsoft wasn't seriously considering it, and I don't doubt that even Sony isn't considering it. I think it's just a huge market that Nintendo kind of really tapped into super early on in a really powerful way, and everyone else is kind of just catching up in also their own little ways too. But obviously, I think what really was the catalyst was that Microsoft looked at, again, how much stronger their competition was becoming, or how much performant it was becoming. And that was not something that was okay, all right? I think this was the bigger catalyst, right? Looking at the state of Windows 11 and comparing it to, again, its most closest OS competitors in the field of gaming. So according to the fellows over at Windows Central, according to them, workers will shift on fixing Windows 11 performance on handheld devices. There are devices like the Legion Go and Rogue Ally, the former of which now has a SteamOS variant that performs better than Windows. So basically, instead of making that handheld system, they're focusing on the next generation of consoles, as if this current generation is actually even worth buying. Not really, in my opinion. Just me being here. And ultimately, they're focusing on fixing Windows 11, which I actually think is the smart play to make. Look, I don't think it's a joke to anybody. Windows 11 is bloated, okay? It's like Jabba the goddamn Hutt walking around, okay? All right, just goddamn consuming resources. We can all agree on that. A fresh install of Windows 11 is going to be a lot more bloated than a fresh install of even the most bloated Linux operating system, I guess something like Linux Mint even, which doesn't come with all of the fat trimmed. And the reason for that is, obviously, over the last few years, I think we all can agree that Windows 11 has had so many unnecessary upgrades and additions that nobody is really asking for, okay? A few days ago, I showed you guys how to debloat Windows with a few free scripts. And even though a lot of people may not recommend it because it might kill functionality, generally speaking, I have not used a Windows installation without any slight debloating for years now, just because you do get better performance. Even if it's not super amazing performance on really high-end hardware, for people that have budget systems, which I know a lot of you guys do, I know a lot of people have budget systems that, are definitely aging, get performance increases, right? You can get an extra year, 2 years out of your life when you trim down Windows 11 to a useful degree, okay? When all you really need to do is play video games, you might not need features like AI, you might not need half the bloat that ships with Windows 11, so it's probably worth trimming it down to your heart's content just to get the better performance. Now, one thing that I think is very evident, I want to walk down history lane with you. This did not come out of the fact that Valve just suddenly wanted to be altruistic and make a competitor. Valve, years ago, this is back in like 2012, like haunted gaming Some Ordinary Gamers days, Valve created what is known as the Steam Machine. So back in the day, there used to be these Alienware Steam machines, which, again, in 2012, these were $749 US. Now, you can't buy these anymore because they don't make them. But this was the first progenitor of Valve's foray into Linux. So this is back when SteamOS was not Arch-based, it was Debian-based, which was a different kind of branch of Linux, so to speak, a different distribution tree. So again, when this came out of the digital primordial ooze, it basically was a Linux-based device that required developers, Valve included, to port their games specifically over to Linux, meaning that there was no translation layer. The developers had to write the game and port it over to the Linux operating system. Now, obviously, for a device that sold a fraction of what is the fraction PC space at the time, not every developer wrote their games over to Linux, okay? I think there was a few developers out there, like I think Deus Ex ended up getting a port, Alien Isolation ended up getting a port, Tomb Raider ended up getting a port, and obviously all of Valve's games. But it was not enough for somebody to consider purchasing this when they couldn't run 99% of their Steam library. Now, of course, Valve went down this road because back in the Windows 8 days, if you don't remember the Windows 8 days, it was the one with that really shitty tablet-like interface on the PC. Like, I don't know what the fuck Microsoft was thinking. But evidently, it pissed off Gabe Newell to the point where he considered it to be a disaster. And specifically, he considered it to be a disaster because of things like the Windows stores, right? So the Windows Store, he said, could dent the success of Valve's own marketplace, which was Steam. So according to Gabe Newell, who basically had said that we want to make it as easy as possible for the 2,500 games on Steam, of course, at the time, to run on Linux as well. And the reason why Valve wanted to do this was because they couldn't trust Microsoft, okay? If Microsoft could suddenly turn off the tap and prevent users from installing Steam and instead rely on the Microsoft Store, remember, they own the majority of, the Windows market. What else are you going to do at the time instead of buying a Windows PC? You go and buy a Mac, which even at the time wasn't the apples to orange, like apples to apple comparison, right? Like Mac systems, even though they're pretty awesome now, are still not gaming devices. If you're getting a gaming device, it's probably a Windows PC. So of course, Valve decided to go to the drawing board and they said, listen, if we can't get the developers to port their game over, what we can do is we can readjust our Linux strategy. So they wrote Valve Proton. They wrote the Proton software, which allows any of us now to purchase a game on Steam, even if it's for Windows, and through a software known as Wine, a translation layer, you can run Windows software on Linux. It translates all of these software calls on the fly. So it translates a Windows call to a Linux-compliant POSIX call, which again, at that moment, means that you can run your big shiny Windows game on a Linux system. And for a developer, it's great because they don't have to port the game to Linux. All they have is a Windows version that just seamlessly works. So from my understanding, and I haven't tried this, but you can even pick up games like, Elden Ring, Night Rain, which just came out. Literally, I think it's just coming out. And provided the anti-cheat doesn't stop you, you can just play that Windows game entirely underneath Linux. And with a lot of community support now, you can also even modify these games. You can do whatever you want. So Valve basically made sure that down the road, they have some piece of software that will always keep them outside the control of Microsoft. Now, obviously, in the last couple days with other devices, they've made SteamOS general purpose, and they're going to release it, meaning that now, for the first time, gamers have a choice. They can either download a copy of Windows 11 from the store, or they can download SteamOS. And again, you have a choice. Remember, choice is good. Even if you don't want to switch to Linux, I think a lot of you guys can appreciate that it's good to have the choices. And if, in Valve's case, the choice means a smoother system that gives you better performance, better battery life even, then maybe it might convince people to switch over, because now you really don't have to deal with the bloated shit of Windows. Now, one of the things that I feel like Microsoft can really succeed on over here is if they port the Xbox system software. Now, for anybody that doesn't know, Xbox One, when it dropped, it had its controversy. But if you ask me, I think since 2013, Xbox has had the best software for gaming consoles in general since that day. I don't think PlayStation 4 and 5 has ever been as cool. I don't even think Nintendo Switch, I think that's just been its own boring state. I think when it comes to functionality, Xbox is probably the best system you can pick up. The amount of applications you can run, the amount of backwards compatibility you can run across multiple Xbox generations, like all the way back to the original Xbox, and just the fact that you can run all of your software super smooth is crazy awesome. I've even made videos where I've said maybe Microsoft should take the extra step and allow gamers to run fucking Windows 11 on their actual Xboxes, so you, the gamer, can turn your little mid-range Xbox into an actual gaming PC for a very, 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 very competitive price. But the reason why I say porting this software over is that, generally speaking, Microsoft does some really cool shit in here. So I'm going to walk you through a bit of technical stuff. What makes this software so much better than Windows 11, personally, is that they do already trim off a fuck ton of the bloat. The way that this software works is through virtual machine technology. And I've talked a lot about virtual machine technology on my channel. Okay, I'm like the virtual machine fucking guy. So I've shown you guys how to make virtual machines on Linux. You can even pass graphic cards through them. But one of the things that I showed was me taking my RTX 4090 at the time and turning it into 32 RTX 4090s, at least virtually. So the way that I did this was through something known as Microsoft's Hyper-V technology. Now, Hyper-V is a Type 1 hypervisor, similar to Linux's KVM, where, again, it runs at the kernel level. So Microsoft's virtual machine technology allowed me, in using a few scripts that you can easily write and run, you can basically share a RTX 4090 between your host operating system and a virtual machine. So the reason why this is important to mention is the way that the Xbox works is that when you fire up an Xbox system and you see that main menu, what you're typically in is in a hypervisor, right? You're in Hyper-V. So every single one of those boxes, whether they be something like Netflix, or whether they be a old Xbox game, or something very recent, these are all different virtual machines that you can spin up. So have you ever wondered how the Xbox Quick Resume works? Like, you know that feature where you can just like open up any recent game and it just immediately puts you back where you left it? It's because of things like virtual machines, right? So when you run a virtual machine, you can just save the state. Much like when you're playing an emulated game, you can just go to File, Save State, and then you can walk away and come back and load that exact fucking point. That's exactly what Microsoft has done. Whenever you turn off a video game or you just leave it and you come back to it, all the system is doing is spinning up the virtual machine and saying, hey, we have an exact copy of the game's memory. Let's just load that back in and Bob's your uncle, you're back where you left off. It's something so cool that Microsoft does through Hyper-V and virtualization technology that Nintendo hasn't been able to replicate it. PlayStation hasn't been able to replicate it, and to be honest, until Valve decides to take a crack at it with things like KVM and GPU virtualization, they won't be able to take a crack at it either. These are all features that Microsoft has matured and has fucking developed, that if they decided, if they had done this years ago, and ported this version of the Xbox software over to these AMD-based handheld gaming systems, which I'm sure they can do. Remember, the Xboxes themselves are nothing more than standard off-the-shelf PC stuff with, you know, AMD-based APUs inside them, which is not so far off from these handheld gaming systems. Obviously, there are differences, but I'm sure that Microsoft could have easily ported this over, especially with the amount of resources that they have. Had we had the Xbox's system software over with all of the goodies that come on the Xbox itself, I honestly would probably switch over to their software just because it is genuinely very bloat-free in comparison to real Windows 11. So again, Microsoft's focusing on cleaning up Windows 11, which I think is a fucking noble goal. I think honestly at this point, they've probably been very embarrassed. I think honestly speaking, they're absolutely sweating bullets here. Simply due to the fact that, you know, in raw comparisons, right? Like when the performance comes out that Valve's version of Linux is running Windows software better than the official branded Windows operating system, I mean, that's gotta be embarrassing. So obviously they're going out of their way to optimize and fix up Windows 11, especially for these devices, because ultimately this is a battleground that I'm sure Microsoft absolutely wants to win, okay? Microsoft does not want to lose ground to a competitor in the space, a competitor known as Valve. You know, in things like the laptop space, when you look at things like the MacBook, ever since Apple switched over, there's a lot of people who used to be hardcore Windows-only laptop users like me. And honestly, switching over to the MacBooks was not something I did out of nowhere. It was something I did because they made better actual processors. They made the better hardware. So Microsoft's on a lot of fronts where they're actually being threatened. And look, you know, for as large as you think something is, remember, hubris will always take advantage of people that literally get too complacent, right? Like if Microsoft is getting too complacent in spaces like gaming consoles, handheld computers, laptops, who's to know down the road if Valve's SteamOS doesn't become so good that people who may not even be gamers, people who just want a cleaner system. Remember, Windows 10 is dying this year, and there's a lot of computers that do not even support Windows 11. What is stopping those people from switching over to a modern Linux kernel that respects their, I guess, old software or old hardware at this point, and gives them better performance because the system itself, the software, isn't as bloated as Microsoft's current offerings? I think at this moment in time, like we're actually seeing like Microsoft really be threatened on that software end. And I probably would never have seen it, but given the fact that all these things are culminating so quickly, it's just such an interesting time to see like the dynamics start to change a little bit, you know? Like there's more competition showing up, and for the first time, you can see that the complacency of Microsoft, where they've kind of been sitting here for like damn near over a decade, if not 2 decades, completely being at the top, and finally, for once, being so threatened, has kind of put them into the danger zone. Okay, they really, really need to get their shit together. Otherwise, it may not be too long that, forget Valve for a second, the stuff that Valve does with Linux bleeds into every distribution out there, right? And if there comes out a distribution that can actually challenge Microsoft on a compatibility level for not just games, but maybe even software, and it can be more efficient at the same time, it's pretty much over for companies like Microsoft. Or not over, but it's kind of over for the fact that Windows is so goddamn dominant. But ladies and gentlemen, yeah, I wanted to kind of yap about this because it's all developing so fast. And if you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Just like if you dislike it, I am out. One of my favorite Reddit boards on the internet is r/YouTube. And it's not because, you know, there's some crazy good advice about YouTube over here. No, I feel like most of this, like, actual subreddit is complaining about the ad blockers on the internet. You know, every other day, you always find somebody who posts the ad blockers are not allowed on YouTube. And again, YouTube will remind you, you know, it's against terms of service to use that ad blocker. But you know, you can go ad-free with YouTube Premium, and the creators can still get paid. So it's kind of like having ad block, and then, you know, the people that are, you know, uploading the videos that you watch on this channel still get money from the ads, or technically from your premium subscription. And you know what? Sometimes it's best to know that when it comes to this, like, actual Reddit, they're always usually giving people, like, the cheat codes to avoid paying for that YouTube Premium. It's like, here are the plugins required to watch YouTubes. Remove YouTube Shorts, okay? Return the YouTube dislikes, which this is kind of a useless extension because they kind of just, they kind of do, like, a lot of math to make the dislikes seem closer, but generally under research, it really is not an accurate dislike counter, which is one of the reasons why I don't even bother using it anymore. uBlock Origin Lite, okay, which is by far the premier ad blocker that you just install. And I have no idea what YouTube Row Fixer is, but I do know other, like, extensions, like I think it's like Sponsor Block, all the other stuff that people add to make, you know, your YouTube experience just really about the YouTube video and not about the advertisements or the algorithm feeding you whatever you want, right? And of course, one of my favorite posts all the time is, fuck you, Google. Now, this is apparently something where somebody loaded up youtube.com and the entire page was this blank with, like, gray squares. Now, a lot of this has to do with YouTube updating ad block detection, which it seems like 99.9% of the subreddit actually uses. You know, I think most people that are internet savvy absolutely love using ad blocks, and I don't even blame them. I think ad block is amazing. I think if you're, I think it's actually better than an antivirus software. Like, if you asked me honestly, like, what I would recommend on somebody's computer, would you browse the internet with antivirus softwares or ad blockers? I think I would absolutely tell you the ad blocker is like absolutely required. It's not just me telling you this. It's like the FBI. It's pretty much every big cybersecurity firm just straight up telling you, yeah, the ads are scary these days. Sometimes they link you to really malicious stuff. You should just block them. And of course, YouTube is constantly at war with ad blockers. And sometimes if you're an ad block lover, you log into YouTube, it's like, whoa, the site's completely broken. So you either wait 2 to 4 hours to get all the updates from like the ad blockers, like they will fight back against YouTube. And at this point, I'm not even ashamed to mention the ad blockers because they literally sit right there in the Google Play Store. Like imagine YouTube telling you it's against terms of services, but then at the same time, in the same fucking breath, they have Google just like advertising it for you, okay? And sometimes you'll find even ad blockers exist on YouTube's like, advertising itself too. So like I have seen YouTube ads. I made a video on a YouTube ad blocker pie that was literally advertised on YouTube itself. So anyways, going in further into this, right? Again, there's more situations where people are like, YouTube, just give up. And they're just blocking you from blocking the ads. Now, I think the normal person response to this is probably downloading a web browser like Brave or something that just ignores all this bullshit. Just like it all packages it in, or Opera GX, or any of these browsers that completely advertise the fact that they're bypassing every ad blocker on the internet. Now, again, if I'm not advocating that you use an ad block on YouTube, you should absolutely pay for YouTube Premium. Remember, ad blocks are against YouTube terms of services. But that's where I learned the actual focal point of today's video. Today I found out YouTube has a premium light option. So I didn't know this, but YouTube is like $14 a month, all right? And premium is $8 a month. So what do you get with this saving, Muda? Well, if you get the premium regular, everything you get on YouTube is all ad-free. And then premium light, most videos are ad-free. So you're still, even under YouTube Premium, albeit light, you still end up getting the fucking ads. Now, as far as most videos are considered, I guess gaming is exempt, fashion is exempt, beauty, news, and more. So yeah, these are just like the categories that I guess you're in. But for most people, all right, if you're watching like music videos or anything like that, that shit ain't ad-free on Premium Light. And I suspect that's where YouTube's like bean counters have noticed like, hey, most people on Premium love music videos. Better not give that away for free. And then of course, one feature you don't get are downloads and background play, which I didn't know this until today. But like, or really I didn't know this until like traveling to the United States. But when you fly from Canada to the United States, you get the ability to watch YouTube in the background on the mobile app, okay? But as soon as you cross the border back into fucking Leafland, YouTube takes that feature away. I don't know why YouTube does this. I easily could go onto Brave, the mobile app on my phone, go to any YouTube video, full screen, and just put it in a little box and just do anything else later, which I tend to do for things like live streams if I'm watching them. Video downloads, I actually did use that feature when flying once, when I just downloaded a bunch of videos because I had like a 4 or 5 hour flight and I was like, this is probably how I'm gonna like, make the time go by. But yeah, I didn't know that YouTube offered a cheaper option. Now, where the controversy comes into a little bit over here is apparently one user found out that Premium Light, they're just going to start adding more ads into Premium Light. So one of the mail that ended up leaking out from a user was like, thank you for being a Premium Light member. Premium Light offers fewer interruptions, so you can watch more of the YouTube you love. And actually, they're pretty true about that. Like a lot of YouTube, a lot of the platform, if you don't have YouTube Premium or an ad block, and actually, I don't use an ad block on this computer either, so whenever you watch me like cover a video and you just see an ad show up, it's because I don't have ad block for YouTube here, just because I don't know how their TOS detection works. Like if I choose to like completely go ad blocked, I don't know if I could get banned somehow. But the other thing is I also don't pay for YouTube Premium, and a lot of that comes from me literally just gutting most of my subscription services. I did like an audit, I want to say like a month and a half ago, and I just saw all the subscription services that I was paying for, and it like added up to like, I think 100, like 110, 120 bucks. And, I can afford that, but obviously it's a pretty like eye-opening experience because like most people who just like are trying to get by and have a couple of these subscription services, the way that these services work is you sub to them once and the idea is you just forget, right? It's kind of like the Patreon thing, like get to the Patreon first and then hope that your audience just forgets that their account is being bled like $4 or $5 a month. And that's kind of the same thing for subscriptions, right? Like, how often do you think, the subscription isn't awesome, but do you ever actually go through the effort of logging in and, completely getting rid of it? I suspect very few people do, which is why it's so popular for a lot of these companies. And so when I looked at how much I was spending, I'm like, no, I'll just knock down everything that I actually don't use. And so at this point, I'm pretty much down to one subscription, which is or actually two. One of them is like a Xbox subscription for online play and the Game Pass, and the other one is like a Spotify family plan because I actually have people in the plan using that. And then actually no, there's one more subscription which is like Google Drive, and that's just because I have to have like things backed up to a cloud server. But anyways, we are writing to let you know that beginning 30th June 2025, ads may appear on Shorts. In addition to that music content when you search or browse, most videos will continue to remain ad-free. Like, brother, what is the point of buying YouTube Premium if that's the case? So anyway, they always go, while we hope that you continue to be a member, you can cancel anytime. And again, like I said, I suspect anybody knows if they're canceled anytime. So according to the user that posted this at the Twit community, after less than 6 months, they're adding ads back into the subscription for non-music videos. So I've been using Premium Lite because I was being offered more adverts than actual video. The record was 8 ad breaks for 90 minutes, each in a 12-minute video. Yes, each ad was 90 minutes long. An ad for some scam-sounding charity that spent 90 minutes trying to convince you. Now, I don't know if I entirely believe it, but I've seen some goofy ads on YouTube, obviously, and I've covered it. But he's not wrong. Like, every time I watch, like, I don't know, like a 10, 15-minute video on this platform without an ad block, which I don't have on the system, I always feel like I'm alt-tabbing out of my game like every 2-3 minutes, just so I can move the mouse over and hit skip ad. Like, there is just a lot of ads on this platform, and I think a lot of it just comes out to the fact that YouTube has enshittified the program so much that, like, I think as of a couple weeks ago, a lot of YouTubers were complaining about this because it would ruin their, like, viewer dynamics. But YouTube has been using, like, an AI, their Gemini, to, like, splice in ad breaks automatically onto videos. So you could upload, like, a 10, 12-minute video, and you may not go into the editor and, like, add things in yourself, but YouTube absolutely will. And so it makes it so that when people are watching your 12-minute video, they probably get annoyed and just click off the video because YouTube just keeps assaulting them with constant advertising. And again, I'll get to this later, but I think that it's a really bad time to be an internet service, right? Now, when it comes to subscription services, look, a lot of this started off with like Netflix. For anybody that's too young to remember this, I'll give it to you in the before times. When I was younger, we got a Netflix subscription, and we ended up getting a Netflix subscription because this is before they were just a streaming service. Back in the days of Netflix, you could get a subscription, you could order like a DVD of Spider-Man 2 off of the Netflix catalog. They would send it over to your house, you'd watch the movie, and then in the same envelope they sent you, you would just package it up again and send it back for free. So Netflix kind of came in and killed the rental movie market, right? Like, why would you go to, I don't know, Blockbuster, take a chance on your Friday night, and then you would try to rent a movie. And remember, the most popular movies would always just get rented out for that Friday evening. So it was just like a waste of time for anybody to go to the store. The most popular games and movies would always be rented. So you'd go to Netflix and they'd just have this whole warehouse of movies that anybody could rent, and you would just get whatever you want typically. Then Netflix introduced streaming, and then the streaming just kind of took off. You know, why even bother going to any of these red boxes or, Blockbusters when literally the movies you want are just there for you to stream? You just open an app, you click on the movie, and it just like buffers for a few seconds, and you're into the movie. That literally set apart Netflix from any other, competitor. Now, one thing that I didn't know when I was young at the time was that Netflix was a loss leader. Meaning that Netflix would just give this service at cost, right? Like they would lose money year over year, oftentimes investing millions upon millions of dollars to create their own programming, just so that they could up that user base like crazy. And it wasn't until much later that a lot of companies kind of started doing something similar. So you had things like Disney Plus, you had things like Crave here, you had HBO Plus. Now there's like probably 10 to 15 different streaming services. And a lot of those different streaming services have reinvested in themselves. They've become massive. They've dumped a lot of money. And I really feel like the investors that are behind this, they want to see an actual return. So now it's like, hey, now that we've got these massive user bases, let's go out of our way to up the prices. And one of the reasons why I just kind of strayed away from Netflix was I ended up getting probably like 5 or 6 emails throughout my ownership. It's like, hey, buddy, we're upping the price for your plan. We're upping the price for your plan. And it really was just a matter of all I use Netflix for is watching Breaking Bad over and over again. You know, if I want to watch something on Netflix, I might as well just sub for the month that I'm going to be binging and then stop. Which is why, like, you know, when Squid Game drops, like Squid Game, part 3, I'll sub to Netflix, watch a little bit of it, and then probably unsub. Because honestly, spending the entire course of that, you know, super premium package for the 4K and all that extra bullshit is not worth it, considering all I would use it for is watching one show a year and then maybe rewatching things like Dexter or The Office, right? Until, of course, Netflix decides to arbitrarily take that off because they lost the whole licensing agreement. Now, I suspect, to go back to YouTube, YouTube has been so hyper monetized over the last year or two that I really feel like it might be a scenario where YouTube is more unsustainable than I actually really ever thought. Now, YouTube, ever since like Susan Wojcicki, you know, she passed away, she stepped down from leadership and it passed over to like Neil. It feels like YouTube's tried to like optimize how much ads they can deliver, and they don't really care about the quality of the ads or if the ads are even safe. It's just how much can we fucking deliver, and you know, how much can we get people to possibly be annoyed and use YouTube Premium. I'm not even against the idea anymore of this. Well, I am against the idea, but I'm not even against that this idea would happen. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if YouTube decides to go and charge, you know, maybe like a subscription fee to even access the website some point down the road. I wouldn't even be surprised if YouTube decides to go after the creator and maybe ask them to, you know, or maybe charge them money for using YouTube's vast resources. Remember, a lot of creators upload like multiple hours of video a week, and that is a serious strain on YouTube's server and backend. The fact that you upload a video here and it gets striped to every data center across the world, there's only so much data YouTube can store before it becomes unsustainable. There's just a massive amount of users constantly uploading material. And I don't think it's sustainable, which is why I see all of these premium like advertisement options being pushed, which is why I'm starting to see even like video quality being like rate limited to certain countries or subscription packages. So yeah, it's not a good situation to look at. And the thing is, even if like that happens, you might be like, I'll stop watching YouTube. And I'll probably wager that most people won't, because YouTube doesn't really even have any proper competition. Like, the only competition that comes to my mind is sites like Odyssey or Rumble. And at least for Rumble, that site usually has that bad connotation that if you get banned from YouTube, you just bring your raunchy ass over here. But from a technical perspective, it's probably the only solid mainstream competitor to YouTube. And same for like Odyssey, for instance. But other than that, YouTube is a website all on its own, right? Like, YouTube is kind of like the video sharing king. It's becoming like sort of a live streaming platform that you can't ignore. And, you know, considering what's been happening with TikTok and how weird that platform's been in terms of its regulation, YouTube Shorts is at least the only other option alongside Meta that just kind of exists. YouTube has barely any competition, which is one of the reasons why they can shitify their platform, and all people can do is kind of just complain about it. Because again, if there was a better world out there, if there was a better option out there that respected the viewer and the creator more, people might considering stepping away and leaving there. But YouTube is so entrenched that, you know, they really can do this, and all people can do is just effectively complain. But yeah, I didn't know that YouTube had like a premium light option, and I think it's hilarious that even premium, even if it's premium light, is just becoming fucking ad ridden anyways. So the whole reason that you would get this option, like if all the ads aren't even gone and you're not getting any more features, is there even a point to paying for the cheaper option? At that point, you might as well just, you know, budget and cut another subscription service and just go all the way into full YouTube Premium. Because this shit is just getting embarrassing. If you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike if you dislike it. I am out.